Chapter 2840. But on second thought, Su Zimo quickly realized that this wasn't necessarily the case. Given that person's scheming methods, he might have some other tricks up his sleeve. He'd even suppressed the hostility and killing intent in his heart for the sake of planning this. Although the Yin-Yang talisman scripture could shield him from the heavenly mysteries, too much thought would inevitably leave traces behind. Su Zimo gradually reined in his thoughts and emptied his mind. The 8 peak lords were greatly reassured after receiving the old man's message talisman. In that case, our trip to the celestial bestowment world should be worry-free, Lu Yun said. It's hard to say. Zen Sword Peak's lord was more cautious. Don't forget that we can't interfere no matter what happens on the battlefield. Even the great emperors can't interfere. Yu Lan, the peak master of the ultimate sword peak, said, "Let Lin Xuanjin go with Brother Su. She has comprehended the immortal killing sword, and now her fighting strength has increased greatly. If they join hands, they can take care of each other in the demonic battlefield. That would be best." The other peak lords nodded in agreement. Mirage Sword Peak's Lord Feng Su smiled. "Actually, we don't need to be too nervous. After all, we have the Fengtian medallion. Brother Su and Lin Xuanjin can immediately withdraw from the battlefield if the situation doesn't look right. That being said, no one could guarantee what would happen when the time came. Last time, Lin Xuanjin had been frozen in place by Xiang Meng's spacetime imprisonment. His medallion had been stolen, and he'd almost died. Although Xiang Meng's group had the medallion, they'd all been killed by Su Zimo with a single slash of his sword. Everyone returned to their respective residences and gathered at the Myriad Swords Palace. The 8 peak lords led the group to the celestial bestowment world. Apart from Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin, there were also a few perfected immortals from the various sword peaks accompanying them on this trip to the heaven bestowment world. For example, Kitsune of Sword Burial Peak and Yin Ting of Extreme Sword Peak. Because he'd been in seclusion last time, he hadn't been able to witness the great battle on the battlefield. Naturally, he wouldn't miss it this time. Wang Dong, Gong Sunyu, and the other first true immortals of the various sword peaks went as well. However, after some discussion among the peak leaders, they decided that Kitsune, Yin Ting, Wang Tong, Gong Sunyu, and the others were only allowed to go to the celestial tribute world to observe the battle. They were not allowed to enter the fiend battlefield. This time, the restrictions of the celestial tribute world had been lifted. The geniuses of the evil demon battlefield had gathered there. Monsters ran amok, and there were also the 10 great evil demons. The number of evil demons and sinful spirits inside had skyrocketed. No one knew what kind of danger would occur. Apart from Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin, it was too risky for anyone else to enter rashly. Sky Vision World. Many members of the Heavenly Eye race were rushing over from all directions, heading towards the center of the Heavenly Eye world. The void there had deeply caved in. From afar, it looked like a giant eye that stretched across the starry sky, surveying the surroundings. This was an important place in the Heaven's Eye world. Only those of the Heavenly Eye race at the true spirit realm and above had the right to enter. After entering this entrance, there was a completely different world inside. At that moment, many kings of the Sky Eye clan had gathered in the Sky Eye Palace, including the Cold Eye King. Below the palace, more and more true spirits of the Sky Eye clan had gathered. Among these true spirits of the Sky Eye clan, a man with his eyes closed stood at the front. His robes were rather unique. Black and white were separated in the middle, each occupying half of the robes. When all the true spirits of the Sky Eye clan arrived, they would subconsciously stand behind this man with a respectful expression, not daring to overtake him. Although this man in the black and white robes was only a true spirit realm, his aura was not weak at all in front of the kings in the palace. I'm sure everyone has heard. Seeing that most of his clansmen had arrived, the Cold Eye King spoke slowly. The restrictions of the celestial tribute world have been lifted. In the evil demon battlefield, the number of evil demons and sinful spirits has skyrocketed, making it easier to obtain battle merits. The true spirits of the 3,000 worlds have swarmed here. Our clan has always been rather powerful in the evil demon battlefield. On the battle merit jade tablet, there are 2 true spirits. Speaking of this, The cold-eye king paused slightly. His face darkened as he said coldly, "However, 1,000 years ago, one of them died at the hands of the Sword World's 9th Sword Peak Master." This matter had long been spread in the upper world. Everyone in the Sky Eye clan knew about it. Revenge. An eye for an eye. The Sky Eye clan's true spirits were all riled up. The Cold-Eye King nodded. "That's right. If anyone from the Sword World dares to enter the evil demon battlefield again, we will definitely make them pay." At this moment, the leading man in the black and white robes suddenly opened his eyes. His left eye was pitch black, while his right eye was pure white. Just by simply opening his eyes, the surrounding void trembled slightly, and a trace of unusual energy fluctuation appeared. "Don't worry," the man said faintly. "Leave that peak master to me." The Cold-Eye King said, "Xia, I'm naturally not worried about your battle strength, but don't be careless. That Su Zhu killed Xiang Meng and the others. He definitely has some tricks up his sleeve." "Huh," Xia smiled. "I do hope that he has some tricks up his sleeve. It would be best if he's worth me using the 6 paths of reincarnation." As soon as he finished speaking, the blood mark on Xia Yin's forehead opened slightly, revealing a terrifying aura. The Sky Eye clan's true spirits behind him trembled, and subconsciously took half a step back. Around this time, almost all the 3,000 worlds received news about the celestial tribute world. Countless prodigies and peerless true spirits appeared one after another. Everyone realized that all the living beings of the various worlds and races would gather at the evil demon battlefield. There would be a feast of slaughter. While killing evil demons and sinful spirits to obtain battle merits, it was also a good opportunity to spar with other prodigies on the battlefield. This would be an unprecedented clash of the 3,000 worlds. It would be an unprecedented event. Heaven World, Divine Firmament Immortal Realm, one of the 4 major immortal sects, the Flying Immortal Sect. In a pavilion surrounded by lush green mountains and clear waters, a woman in a plain blue palace dress sat there. Her hair was tied up in a flying immortal bun, and her face was covered with a veil. A guqin was placed on the table in front of the woman. Green smoke rose from the incense burner next to her. The woman's figure was shrouded in clouds, and she looked ethereal. Clang, clang, clang. The woman plucked the strings of the guqin. Although her technique was brilliant, there seemed to be a trace of resentment, unwillingness, and sadness in the music. There was no artistic conception at all. I didn't expect the world-renowned guqin fairy to be able to play such a terrible tune. Right at this moment, a man walked over from afar. Before he even got close, he spoke in a loud voice. The woman in the pavilion was one of the original 4 fairies, Guqin Fairy Meng Yao. Meng Yao raised her head and glanced at the man. She ignored him and continued playing the guqin. The man carried a long sword on his back. His face was slightly pale, and he seemed to be injured. A gentle breeze blew past, and the man's empty sleeve fluttered. Seeing that Meng Yao did not react, the one-armed man could not help but laugh. "Taoist Meng Yao, your state of mind is already in a mess. Why force yourself?" After the battle at Jianmu Mountain Range, the world only knows about the Guqin demon. Who knows about the Guqin fairy? Chapter 2841. Bang! At this point, one of the zither strings suddenly snapped. It was clear that Meng Yao's mind was in turmoil. The one-armed man's words had indeed hit her where it hurt. Meng Yao looked up and stared coldly at him. She sneered and said, "Yuehua, if you're just here to ridicule me, you don't have to. You're not much better off after the battle at Jianmu Mountain Range." This one-armed man was the Moonlight Sword Immortal from Heaven and Earth Academy. During the battle at Jianmu Mountain Range, one of the Moonlight Sword Immortal's arms had been cut off by Wu Dao's original body. He was covered in injuries, and was luckily saved by the Academy Patriarch. However, the power of eternal damnation was like gangrene that remained in his body, and could not be removed. His arm had never been able to grow back. Meanwhile, Meng Yao had lost to the zither demon, Xiao Siluo, in a zither competition. In her anger, she wanted to kill the zither demon, but Wu Dao's original body stopped her and destroyed her face. To her, this was even crueler than killing her. Just this battle alone had ruined her reputation and destroyed her glory. In the current divine firmament celestial realm, Almost no one mentioned the 4 great fairies anymore. There were only 3 great fairies left. The slap that Wu Dao's original body had given her also contained the power of eternal damnation. Her face had never recovered. Therefore, all these years, she had been wearing a veil and did not dare to show her true face to others. She didn't even dare to look at that scarred face. This had already become a knot in her heart. Eternal damnation was not only because of the injuries on her face, but also because of her current situation. Don't be so hostile. The Moonlight Sword Immortal waved her hand lightly and said, "After all, we have a common enemy." "So what?" Meng Yao did not think much of it and said, "In our current state, do you still have a chance to take revenge?" "Of course." The Moonlight Sword Immortal said proudly. "No matter how strong that Araki Takashi from the Demon Domain is, can he compete with the Heaven and Earth Academy and the Flying Celestial Sect? Can he stand shoulder to shoulder with the Academy Patriarch and the Flying Celestial Sect Master? What about that Su Zimo from back then? Going against me in every aspect and showing off. Haha, in the end, didn't you still die in the Emperor's tomb with a miserable ending?" Meng Yao frowned and asked, "What are you trying to say?" The Moonlight Sword Immortal said in a low voice, "Taoist Meng Yao, you must not be discouraged. With your zither skills, as long as you are willing to put down your pride and travel the 3,000 realms, you will definitely be able to make friends with many powerful forces. When the time comes, we'll unite all the experts and plan carefully. Would we still have to worry about not being able to kill Araki Takashi from the Demon Domain?" Meng Yao pointed at her own face and laughed self-mockingly. "With my appearance, who would listen to me play the zither?" After Meng Yao's face was disfigured, her Dao heart had been shaken. Over the years, she had suffered all kinds of torment, suffered countless supercilious looks, and was already disheartened. The Moonlight Sword Immortal said, "There's still a chance to restore my ruined appearance. My severed arm can also be regrown." When Meng Yao heard the Moonlight Sword Immortal's confident tone, she couldn't help but feel a little moved. The Moonlight Sword Immortal said, "Since a power like eternal damnation was born in this world, there must be a power that can neutralize it. What idea do you have?" Meng Yao asked. The Moonlight Sword Immortal said, "As far as I know, the royal bloodline of the Protoss and some divine sons and daughters will cultivate a kind of power of faith that can neutralize the power of eternal damnation." "Protoss?" Meng Yao frowned slightly and shook her head. "It's already very difficult to meet an ordinary Protoss, let alone a royal divine son or daughter." The Moonlight Sword Immortal smiled. "You've been living in seclusion all these years. I'm sure you don't know what's happening outside." Then, she briefly described what had happened in the Celestial Tribute world and continued, "With this opportunity, most of the forces in the 3,000 realms will gather in the Celestial Tribute world. Usually, we don't have the chance to meet the divine sons and daughters, but we can use this opportunity to prepare gifts and pay a visit to the Celestial Tribute world." Meng Yao was a little tempted by the Moonlight Sword Immortal's words. If she could restore her appearance, it would be worth it no matter what gifts she prepared. The Moonlight Sword Immortal continued, "Moreover, in the Celestial Tribute world, we can also meet the experts of the various super worlds. Those are the peak existences of the 3,000 realms. Araki Takashi from the Demon Domain is nothing." "Okay." Meng Yao pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. During the years when she was one of the 4 great fairies, she had accumulated many rare treasures. Now was the time to put them to good use. "When are we leaving?" Meng Yao asked. "The sooner the better." The Moonlight Sword Immortal said, "The sooner we reach the Celestial Tribute world, the better." At the same time, in the Mountain and Sea Immortal Sect, a young Taoist nun carrying a huge square chessboard quietly left the Celestial Tribute world and headed in the direction of the Celestial Tribute world. Zixian Celestial Kingdom, top of the library. A plain-clothed woman with a plain face held an ancient book in her hands. She seemed to sense something and looked into the distant sky for a while. "The wind is blowing," the plain-clothed woman murmured softly. There were only 3 great fairies left in the divine firmament celestial realm. Among the 3 great fairies, Painting Fairy Mo Qing preferred to be quiet. She was not willing to show up even at ordinary gatherings, let alone this kind of gathering that involved fighting and killing. Book Fairy Yin Zhu was indifferent and did not like fighting. Chess Fairy Junyu was the most combative. Dragon World. A group of dragon kings led the powerful true dragons of the dragon race to the celestial tribute world on a huge dragon boat. On the dragon boat, among the many true dragons, there was a young girl in white. She looked young, but she had already cultivated to the peak of the true dragon stage. The young girl looked into the sky in a daze, as if she had something on her mind. "Li-er, what are you thinking about?" Not far away, a silver-haired woman looked at the young girl with a hint of warmth in her eyes, as she asked softly, "Mother." The young girl called out and suddenly took out a horn that was half the height of a person from her storage bag. The young girl said, "I can cultivate so quickly all thanks to Father's legacy. And it was also thanks to Brother Mo Ling of the Dragon Abyss planet that I was able to find this horn. Why are you suddenly thinking of these things?" The silver-haired woman was a little helpless. She shook her head slightly and said, "You are a dragon, and he is just a weak human. The gap between the two of you will only get bigger. You have already become a true dragon in such a short time. And that human probably did not even manage to leave the Dragon Abyss planet. He is still at the Earth Origin realm. You have only met him once. Your future is the Sea of Stars. But he can only be trapped in a muddy ditch for the rest of his life. You will not have the chance to meet again. Mother Lear understands." The young girl responded and sighed softly. She knew that her mother was right, but she still felt a sense of regret. Although that experience was short, it had left a deep impression on her. At least that Brother Mo Ling of the human race was very good to her. The silver-haired woman wanted to divert the young girl's attention, so she changed the topic and said, "From what I know, 2 peerless monsters were born in the Wutong world in this generation. One is male and the other is female. They are known as Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden. If you meet them in the evil demon battlefield, you have to be careful." "I know, Mother." The young girl responded obediently. Chapter 2842. World of Light. God said, "Let there be light." This was the origin of the world of light. The world of light had once been glorious and dazzling in the middle world, creating the era of light. It was like the sun in the sky, illuminating all 3,000 worlds. It had also declined, but fortunately, its inheritance had not been broken. Most of the time, it was one of the most powerful worlds in the middle world. In the world of light, every inch of space was filled with light. Here, there was no corner that light could not illuminate, and all darkness had nowhere to hide. In the world of light, there was only day and never night. According to legend, the ancestors of the Protoss were born from the first ray of light. Therefore, the golden bloodline of the Protoss contained an incomparably powerful power that could purify evil and dispel darkness. Inside the Temple of Light, more than 100 god kings gathered and sat high up. Below them stood thousands of Protoss true spirits. Regardless of gender, they were all blonde and handsome. In front of the thousands of Protoss true spirits stood a man and a woman. Although they were also true spirits, their attire was somewhat different from the many Protoss true spirits behind them. The man wore a shiny golden armor and had a golden sword by his side. His eyes were deep, and his gaze was like a torch. He had an extraordinary aura. The woman was extremely beautiful. She wore a golden robe that was just right for her body, outlining her perfect figure. Her golden hair was slightly curled and fell on her shoulders like waves. Her beautiful eyes were like water, reflecting a faint light. The man and woman stood side by side like a golden couple. The most unique thing about the two of them was that they both wore a golden crown on their heads. Around the crown, there was a ring of gemstones, and a mysterious light fell like a waterfall, enveloping the two of them, making them look even more noble and extraordinary. Among the Protoss, only those who had awakened the royal bloodline of the Protoss had the opportunity to wear this golden crown. Those who had awakened the royal bloodline of the Protoss were known as the children of God, or the daughters of God. They were the children of God, or the daughters of God in the outside world. Bright. At the highest position, A god king looked down at the Protoss royal true soul in golden armor and slowly said, "My god king is the Protoss royal family's true soul." This time, the restrictions of the celestial realm have been lifted, and the number of evil spirits has skyrocketed. It's the perfect time for you to earn merits. If you can exchange for some treasures in the treasure pagoda, they should be able to help you advance further. The Protoss true spirit named Minghui smiled and said proudly, "Battle achievements are secondary. I just want to go to the demonic battlefield and meet the supreme true spirits of the 3,000 worlds. I'd like to see who among those of the same level can compete with me." The Protoss. The god kings above nodded slightly. They did not doubt Ming Hui's words. The god race's physical body and bloodline were stronger than most races. As the son of God, he was one of the best among the Protoss. Although divine son Ming Hui had only comprehended one supreme divine power, if he were to really go against a race that had comprehended two supreme divine powers, with his Protoss bloodline, he might be able to put up a fight. A god king said, "Ming Hui, pick some people to follow you into the demonic battlefield." Divine son Ming Hui said, "There's no need for that. The others will be a burden to me in the demonic battlefield." After pausing for a while, divine son Ming Hui looked at the woman beside him and smiled. He said gently, "I'll only bring one person." "Me." The goddess beside him seemed a little surprised. She shook her head slightly and said, "I'm from the lower domain and have just awakened the royal bloodline. I've just stepped into the true self realm. I can't help you." "It's okay." Divine son Ming Hui smiled and said, "You'll follow me to the celestial realm and watch the battle from the outside. The supreme true spirits of the 3,000 worlds will gather. There will definitely be a great battle." Divine son Ming Hui did not say it explicitly, but he actually wanted to show off his skills in the demonic battlefield and show off in front of the goddess. The goddess lowered her head slightly and seemed a little hesitant. A god king above looked at the goddess and said, "Let's go and watch together. This is a rare occasion in the 3,000 worlds. Watching the supreme true spirits clash and kill will be beneficial to your cultivation." "Okay." Hearing this, the goddess no longer hesitated and agreed. Stone realm. A dead star suddenly exploded, turning into dust and gravel. A bald man carrying a huge stone axe slowly walked out from inside. He was burly and muscular, and there was a dim light flowing on the surface of his body. The bald man's cultivation was at the peak of the true spirit realm, but several figures appeared around him. They were all kings of the stone race. A true spirit realm had several kings protecting him. It was clear that this bald man had an important position in the stone race. "Sherpa, the stone race has already selected helpers for you. They can leave at any time," a king of the stone race said in a deep voice. The bald man twisted his neck, making a strange cracking sound. He looked at the starry sky in the distance and grinned. "Celestial realm, I'm coming. It's best if I can meet those weak sword cultivators in the demonic battlefield and let them have a taste of my shocking sky axe." As he spoke, the bald man swung the huge axe in his hand, leaving huge cracks in the void. Parasol Tree Realm. 9 wan birds pulled a huge starry sky spirit ship in the direction of the celestial realm. On the deck of the ship, a man and a woman stood side by side. The two of them were young, but they had already reached the peak of the true spirit realm. Their bodies were bathed in blazing flames. From afar, they looked like two blazing suns piercing through the sky. Kuan Realm, one of the super realms. There was no land in the Kuan Realm. Everywhere was filled with seawater. This was a world of water that belonged to the ocean. Splash! A huge shadow appeared on the originally calm surface of the sea. A Kuan race member floated out of the water. Its body was huge, thousands of miles long, and it created huge waves around it. Immediately after, this Kuan race member transformed into a human. He held a blue trident in his hand and stood on top of the huge waves, looking in the direction of the celestial realm. Peng Realm, one of the super realms. A streak of golden light flew through the starry sky. It was impossible to see its body clearly. After an unknown period of time, the golden light landed on a huge ferry boat. It retracted a pair of golden wings and transformed into a human figure. It was an incomparably handsome man. The handsome man murmured, "Supreme true spirits have gathered in the demonic battlefield." Interesting. Almost at the same time, the supreme true spirits of the various realms appeared and headed to the celestial realm. Those who could comprehend supreme divine powers and become supreme true spirits were the top true spirits of the various realms. Which one of them wasn't proud and fearless? In the face of such an unprecedented event, these supreme true spirits would definitely not miss it. A green ship left the sorcerer realm. In the blood realm, the blood vine race quietly left. The heirs of the golden crow realm, the flower realm, the poison realm, the insect realm, the astral realm, the tomb realm, and other realms of various sizes all left for the celestial realm under the escort of the kings of their respective realms. In just a few days, the 3,000 realms were in turmoil. Chapter 2843. Celestial Tribute World. Because the time limit had been lifted, experts from various large realms would arrive almost every day, causing Skyreverence Island to become even more lively and crowded with people. Apart from some true spirit experts who wanted to enter the fiendish battlefield to kill sinful spirits, there were also some busybodies who arrived early to watch the show. The 100 ultimate true spirits on the Battle Merit Jade Tablet should all be present at this event. 100 true spirits? I think there's more than that. What do you mean? Some true spirits didn't come to Celestial Tribute World for various reasons, so they didn't leave their names on the War Merit Jade Steel. As far as I know, there's a woman from Celestial Tribute World who calls herself the Chess Immortal. I heard she's here too. Cultivators were discussing all over Celestial Tribute World. A cultivator said, "In my opinion, it's rare for the true spirits of the 3,000 worlds to gather here. They can work together to kill the 10 great demons." There were 10 great demons in the fiendish battlefield, and they were all true spirits of sinful spirits. The 10 great demons were no weaker than the true spirits on the War Merit Jade Steel. Both sides had suffered casualties over the years. Celestial Tribute World had a time limit, so it was difficult for the true spirits of the 3,000 worlds to gather and kill the 10 great demons together. But it was different this time. A cultivator said, "The 10 great evil demons are definitely not going to survive this time. The key is, after the 10 great evil demons fall, will there be some kind of battle between the supreme true spirits of the various realms? Some worlds have a long history of grudges. It's very likely that a war will break out in the fiendish battlefield." Exactly. Sword World and Stone World have a deep grudge. I heard that Sword World and Sky Eye World had a grudge 1,000 years ago. Sword World's 9th Sword Peak Lord killed a true spirit and 9 true spirit experts of Sky Eye World. This is a big grudge. Sky Eye Race's Xia-In arrived 2 days ago. I don't think Sword World will send anyone over unless they want to die. While everyone was talking, many sword cultivators landed on Celestial Tribute Island from a sword-shaped boat in the distance. Sword World is here. Haha, this is going to be interesting. I wonder if the Peak Master of the 9th Sword Peak is among them. I saw him inside. He was wearing a green robe. Oh, this person's cultivation speed is so fast. 1,000 years ago, he was still at the Celestial Being stage, and now he's already at the Kongming stage. As soon as the Sword World's people descended on Heaven Venerate Island, a heated discussion immediately broke out. As far as I know, apart from the 9th Sword Peak Master, Sword World's Lin Xuanjin has also comprehended the supreme divine power, Immortal Slaying Sword. A cultivator solemnly said, "The 2 supreme true spirits of the Sword Realm might not necessarily lose against Xia-In." He fellow Taoist, your thinking is too simple. Another person said, "Do you think only Xia-In would go to the Sword World? The Stone Clan's supreme true spirit Sherpa will definitely attack the people of the Sword Realm." The group from the Sword World descended. Hearing the discussions around them, Lu Yun and the other immortal kings frowned in worry. Even Lin Xuanjin felt the pressure multiply. Only Su Zimo remained calm. "Let's go to Heaven Venerate Pavilion to retrieve the medallion, then rent a residence for everyone to rest," Lu Yun said in a low voice. No one had any objections to this. Although the Heaven Venerate world had loosened its restrictions, many rules remained the same. private fighting and killing were still prohibited in the Heaven Venerate world. Of course, it was a different story if an outsider trespassed in their own residences. Ever since the Hadal Sin grounds of the Heaven Venerate world had been destroyed, the Fiend Demon battlefield had been temporarily closed and hadn't reopened. Everyone gathered here, but they couldn't enter. They could only wait patiently. Su Zimo, Lin Xuanjin, and the others set out for Heaven Venerate Pavilion to retrieve the medallion. Along the way, they overheard the discussions of the cultivators around them, and learned quite a bit of news. The supreme true spirits of the Kuan realm, and the Peng realm, had arrived one after the other with their swords drawn. There was also Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden of the Wutong realm. They were a perfect pair, and their hearts were as one. Both of them were supreme true spirits, and had great chemistry when working together. They were like two people who'd comprehended two unparalleled combat arts at the same time. Chess Immortal doesn't seem to have any true spirit experts in the world of Celestials this time. You don't know yet, do you? Many of the top true spirits of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Demon realms were killed by a great demon. They haven't recovered to this day. What kind of demon is that? I think he's called Araki Takashi or something. When Su Zimo heard those discussions, he murmured in deep thought. Chess Immortal is here as well. Yin Ting crept up behind him and whispered mysteriously, "My sister doesn't know you've come to the Heaven Venerate world. If she did, she'd probably come too." Su Zimo rolled his eyes at Yin Ting. "It looks like you haven't mastered the Zen sword yet." As they spoke, the group from Sword World arrived at Heaven Venerate Pavilion's entrance. "Big Brother Mo Ling." Suddenly, a young girl's excited voice sounded from the entrance. While others did not think much of it, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he frowned. Mo Ling. He had once used this name to hide his identity. Su Zimo looked in the direction of the voice. A young girl in white stood at the entrance of Heaven Venerate Pavilion, looking at him with a face full of surprise. Behind the young girl was a silver-haired woman at the Grotto Heaven realm. "This is..." Su Zimo was stunned when he saw the young girl in white. Dragons. When they saw the young girl in white, they immediately recognized her. The silver-haired woman was also an extremely famous dragon king in the upper world. Since they did not have much of a relationship with her, they cupped their fists at her as a form of greeting. "Big Brother Mo Ling. Don't you remember me?" The young girl in white waved hard at Su Zimo. "Long Yuan planet, I'm Long Li." Realization dawned on Su Zimo as he recalled what had happened on Long Yuan planet. At that time, Long Li had met with danger on the Dragon Abyss planet, and he had stepped in to save him. However, he'd been hunted down by the Great Gene Immortal Empire and didn't dare reveal his identity. So he'd changed his name to Mo Ling. "Fellow Taoist, have you mistaken me for someone else?" Lu Yin smiled faintly. "This is Su Zhu, the Peak Lord of the Sword Burial Peak, the 9th peak of our world." "Ah," Long Li blinked. "So your name is Su Zhu? Then Mo Ling." Su Zimo looked apologetic and explained, "Fellow Taoist Long Li, there were some special circumstances that made it inconvenient for me to reveal my identity. That's why I changed my name to Mo Ling. But I told you my real name." Long Li seemed to be a little resentful. He frowned and said with a straight face, "You lied to me." "That is my fault." Su Zimo smiled wryly. Long Li couldn't hold back her laughter any longer. She waved a hand and said, "I understand. The human heart is sinister, and we should always be on our guard. I don't blame you. I was just joking with you, hee hee." Although Long Li had reached peak true spirit realm, she was still young, and still had the temperament of a young girl. "So your name is Su Zhu. You're not lying to me this time, are you?" Many thanks to fellow Taoists Luo Fengfei, Mu Shui Yi Jiang, and Bushi for their 10,000 book coins. End of chapter. Chapter 2844. The 8 Peak Masters looked at Su Zimo with strange expressions. Naturally, they knew Su Zimo's true name. However, this was a secret and could not be casually mentioned. Su Zimo changed the topic and asked, "I remember that I changed my appearance back on the Dragon Abyss planet. How did you recognize me?" At that time, in order to avoid the pursuit of the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom, not only did he change his name to Mo Ling, He even used the Sanyu Jade Rui to disguise himself as a drunkard to fool others. To think that he would be recognized by Longli today. Longli blinked and smiled smugly. I have a treasure that's refined using a heavenly eye. It can see the form of an essence spirit. And I saw your true appearance back then. Su Zimo nodded to himself. The eyeballs of the heavenly eye race were indeed decent to be able to see through the disguise of the Sanyu Jade Rui. However, it was reasonable for dragons to have some incredible treasures. Longli continued. Furthermore, there's a special aura on you. It seems to be related to us dragons. Su Zimo knew that what Longli was talking about should be the aura brought about by the dragon phoenix essence spirit. However, it was not appropriate for him to say it out loud. Not far away, the silver-haired woman from the dragons looked at Su Zimo with a hint of doubt and bewilderment. Was this the person Lear met on the Dragon Abyss planet? She had heard of the peak master of the ninth sword peak of the sword world, and knew that he was a ruthless person who was decisive in killing. Did this person grow to this extent in such a short period of time? Or was he hiding his cultivation intentionally because of his identity? Naturally, she could sense the special aura that Longli could sense as well. Furthermore, she could sense it even more clearly. That aura was similar to dragons, but was even stronger than the bloodline aura of dragons. Could it be? The silver-haired woman's heart skipped a beat when she thought of a possibility. Mother! Longli grabbed Su Zimo's arm and pulled him in front of the silver-haired woman. He said excitedly, "This is the big brother Imo Ling I mentioned to you before. He's actually the peak master of the ninth sword peak Su Zhu." The silver-haired woman hesitated for a moment before nodding towards Su Zimo, greeting him first. "I'm Longli's mother, the Hui Dragon King." Hornless Dragon King. The hearts of the 8 peak masters shuddered when they heard the 3 words. According to rumor, there were a total of 5 dragon territories in the dragon dimension. They were divided into the Horn Dragon Territory, the Azure Dragon Territory, the Chi Dragon Territory, the Torch Dragon Territory, and the Ying Dragon Territory. They represented the 5 different types of energy of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Of course, there was more than one Dragon King in each dragon region. However, in Qilong Realm, only the strongest Dragon King was qualified to be conferred the title of Hui Dragon King. Therefore, in the upper realm, there was a saying about the 5 great Dragon Kings. The 8 peak masters were peak experts of the Grotto Heaven realm as well. However, they did not have much of a relationship with dragons, or the 5 great Dragon Kings. To think that Su Zimo would be acquainted with the daughter of the Chi Dragon King. Furthermore, the Chi Dragon King's attitude towards Su Zimo was rather friendly. In fact, he was even more polite than the 8 of them. The 8 peak masters did not know that the identity of the peak master of Sword Burial Peak and Longli were only 2 reasons why he was acquainted. The other important reason was that the Chi Dragon King sensed the aura of a taboo dragon phoenix from Su Zimo. "Greetings, senior." Su Zimo returned the greeting with cupped fists with a respectful expression. The 8 peak masters exchanged glances. Although they did not know why the Chi Dragon King had such an attitude towards Su Zimo, it was good to have such a relationship. Normally, the Sword Realm and Dragon World rarely interacted. They did not have much of a relationship or grudges. To think that they would be acquainted with the Chi Dragon King today, because of the relationship between Su Zimo and Longli. If they could establish a relationship with the Dragon World, it would naturally be beneficial for the Sword Realm. "Right," Longli whispered to Su Zimo. "Previously, you instructed me to look for someone named Long Ran who ascended from the lower world. He's indeed in the Dragon World and the Torch Dragon region. Is he all right?" Su Zimo asked. Long Ran was the red-headed ghost of Tianhuang mainland. The red-headed ghost helped Su Zimo greatly in the lower world, and even saved the latter's life. "He's fine," Longli said. "However, he hasn't advanced to the true self realm, and his cultivation realm isn't high. As such, he can't come with us this time round." Su Zimo nodded and was relieved. Knowing that his old friends from Tianhuang mainland were fine was the best news for him. It did not matter whether their cultivation realms were high or low. Up till now, there was news of a few of his old friends who ascended from Tianhuang mainland. However, there were some who were nowhere to be found. For example, his 6 demon brothers in the lower world, his other disciple, Carefree, and Nian Qi. At the thought of Nian Qi, Su Zimo could not help but recall the pitiful little girl in the capital of Great Zhou. She had withered yellow hair, and followed behind him in ragged clothes. "Young master." In a daze, he seemed to have heard Nian Qi's voice calling out softly not far away. Su Zimo shook his head, and cast those thoughts aside for the time being. "Young master, is that you?" However, before long he heard that familiar voice again. It sounded not far away, and there was even a hint of trembling in it. Instinctively, Su Zimo turned around, and looked in the direction of the voice. Not far away, a group of Protoss stood. Their leader was a woman in golden robes with a crown on her head. She was incomparably noble. The woman had golden hair and green eyes. She had a voluptuous figure, and an almost perfect face. She was incomparably stunning, and could not help but exclaim at the uncanny workmanship of the Creator. The Protoss Divine Lady? The 8 Peak Masters also noticed the Protoss woman. Seeing the crown on her head, they immediately recognized her identity. The Hornless Dragon King, Long Li, and the other dragons also looked over. Even the Protoss and God Kings behind the Protoss woman were confused. They did not know what had happened to the Divine Lady for her to be so agitated. Just as everyone was confused, they saw the Divine Lady suddenly run toward the Sword Realm. Seeing that the Protoss woman did not have any hostility, the people of the Sword Realm did not step forward to stop her. Just like that, the Divine Lady almost crashed into Su Zimo's arms in front of everyone's eyes before stopping. "Young master, it's really you." The Divine Lady was excited. Ignoring the gazes of others, she stepped forward and grabbed Su Zimo's hand. The surrounding onlookers widened their eyes, their jaws almost dropping to the ground. The Protoss Divine Lady had the bloodline of the Protoss royal family flowing in her veins. She was pure and incomparably noble. Why did the Divine Lady before them look at Su Zimo, as though she had seen a relative? She did not have the bearing and airs of a Divine Lady at all. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, everyone would have thought that the woman was Su Zimo's maidservant. Su Zimo was also surprised and pleasantly surprised. This goddess was none other than Nian Qi, whom he had been thinking about just a moment ago. Nian Qi had followed him for many years in Tianhuang mainland. She had been by his side since he was still at the Foundation Establishment realm. Nian Qi had always considered herself to be Su Zimo's maidservant. Even after she became the Shunhuang of the Continent of Gods, that did not change. However, in Su Zimo's heart, he had never seen her as a maidservant. Instead, he saw her as his younger sister. End of chapter. Chapter 2845. Nian Qi had been abandoned when she was young, and had to wander around. It was Su Zimo who took her in, and made her feel the warmth of home for the first time. Later, she left Tianhuang region alone out of guilt for the godly Ho clan, and wanted to help Su Zimo. She even became Shenhuang, but she wasn't happy. After ascending, she had awakened the royal bloodline of the Protoss, and became the noblest bloodline of the Protoss. But even so, she didn't feel a sense of belonging. If she could, she was willing to abandon all her status, and stay by Su Zimo's side for the rest of her life. The Protoss behind her might be her clansmen, but she only had one family, and that was Su Zimo. The 8 Peak Masters looked at Su Zimo with strange expressions. The dragon's girl hadn't separated yet, and here came another goddess who was even more intimate than the dragon's girl. What was going on? The 8 Peak Masters knew that Su Zimo was Qinglian's true body. They thought that they knew Su Zimo well enough. But today, they found that the Peak Master of the 9th Sword Peak was a little unfathomable. He was so young, but his cultivation was too deep. Kitsune didn't know Long Li, but she recognized Nian Qi. She wasn't surprised by their relationship. Yunting suddenly became nervous. He glanced at Long Li and Nian Qi with hostility. "Sister has a lot of opponents," Yunting muttered. Now 2 of them had popped up, and both of them had such prominent statuses. Yunting looked at Long Li and Nian Qi, thinking that his sister didn't have much of an advantage. It was a bit difficult. "Nian Qi, how are you doing in the Protoss?" Su Zimo sized up Nian Qi and nodded. "Not bad, not bad. You've already stepped into the true One realm. Your cultivation speed is very fast. I'm fine. Nianqi smiled and said, It's just that I think of young master every day, but there's still no news of young master. I'm a little worried. The distance between the heaven realm and the god realm was too great. No matter how big of a commotion the heaven realm's celestial immortals and true immortals caused, it might not even reach the god realm. Cough cough. The group of Protoss not far away finally reacted. The god kings frowned, their expressions ugly. A deity king coughed heavily and secretly reminded Nianqi. He then transmitted his voice to her through divine sense. Nianqi, you are a goddess. Remember your identity. When Nianqi heard that, she pouted her lips with her back facing the god kings and thought to herself, I don't care about the identity of a goddess. Despite her thoughts, Nianqi knew that if she acted too close to Su Zimo, it would instead cause trouble for Su Zimo. Nianqi had a lot of things she wanted to tell Su Zimo, but she knew that there were too many people around, and now wasn't the time. The goddess looked at the god kings nearby and explained, This is an old friend of mine from the lower realms. I didn't want to meet him today, so I lost my composure a little. One of the god kings said, Since you've ascended, you should sever your karma with the lower realms. You're a goddess, and he's just a servant. The gap between the two of you is too great. It's best if you don't contact each other in the future. Nianqi's expression turned cold. He's not just an old friend, he's also my benefactor. Lu Yan frowned when he heard the word servant. He stood out and said in a deep voice, Fellow Taoists of the god race, this is the peak master of the ninth sword peak of the sword world. He's not a servant as you say. The ninth sword peak, burial peak? The god king's expressions changed when they heard this. They seemed to have thought of something. 1,000 years ago, Su Zimo's battle on the Fiend battlefield still had some influence, and made a name for himself. At the side, the hornless dragon king's expression was cold as he suddenly remarked, Fellow Taoist Su Zhu has known my daughter for many years. Even if she's here in the dragon race, she's an esteemed guest. Why is she a servant in the mouth of the god race? The Chi Dragon King also stood out to speak for this person. The god king's expressions changed. After a while, a god king suddenly smiled and said, If that's the case, we've been rude. The peak lord of the ninth sword peak. It's an honor to meet you for a long time. Nianqi turned and asked, Fellow Taoist Su, where is Sword World staying? I'll pay you a visit when I have the time. More and more living beings gathered around. Worried that they would bring unnecessary trouble to Su Zimo, Nianqi temporarily changed the way he addressed Su Zimo. I haven't found a place to stay yet. Su Zimo shook his head. I'll take the Skypestalment medallion and rent a house later. Nianqi frowned. She still wanted to find a chance to speak with Su Zimo alone, but she was still the Protoss goddess. It wouldn't be good for her to follow behind the people of Sword World and watch them search for a house before returning to the Protoss residence. Su Zimo seemed to have noticed Nianqi's dilemma and smiled. Where does your Protoss live? I don't have anything to do here, so I'll pay you a visit. Nianqi was overjoyed and quickly told Su Zimo the Protoss's address in the Skypestalment world. Afterward, the two parted ways without further conversation. Nianqi headed for her residence under the escort of the God Kings. The Chi Dragon King and Long Li bade farewell to the people of Sword World, and also left. At the entrance to the Skypestalment world, the people of Sword World finally entered the Skypestalment pavilion and took out their Skypestalment medallions. Next, they needed to find a place to stay on Skypestalment Island. Due to the sudden increase in the number of people on Skypestalment Island, the number of houses that were originally abundant became a little tight. The people of Sword World walked for a long time before finding an empty house and renting it. While the people of Sword World rested here, Su Zimo adjusted his breathing for a while before getting up to leave. He prepared to go to the Protoss residence to find Nianqi. Just as he reached the door, Lu Yan stopped him. Are you going to see the goddess of the Protoss? Lu Yan asked. Su Zimo nodded and didn't hide anything. Lu Yan pondered for a while and said, You have to be careful. The identity of the Protoss goddess is special. The divine realm will never allow a goddess to marry another race. The divine realm forbids the spread of the royal bloodline. This is a heinous crime in the Protoss. Su Zimo laughed and shook his head. Brother Lu, you worry too much. Lu Yan still didn't have the slightest hint of a smile on his face. He said in a low voice, there's one more person you have to pay attention to. As far as I know, the divine son of the Protoss, divine son Ming Hui, is also here. This divine son Ming Hui is known as the first true spirit of the Protoss. He wasn't in the crowd just now. If he finds out that you're close to the goddess of the Protoss, he might be hostile to you and cause trouble for you in the fiend battlefield in the future. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he responded casually, as if he didn't care at all. He already had many strong enemies on this trip to the celestial realm, so one or two more wouldn't matter. Moreover, he had come to the fiend battlefield to fight a great battle. Lu Yan gave a few more words of advice before Su Zimo left Sword World's residence and headed to the Protoss residence. Fighting was still forbidden in the celestial realm, so Lu Yan and the others weren't worried that Su Zimo would encounter any danger on the way. As for the Protoss residence, the other party already knew that Su Zimo was the peak lord of the 9th Sword Peak. Without a deep feud, the king of the god race would not lay his hands on Su Zimo. End of chapter. Chapter 2846. Sky Tribute Island. A man and a woman, covered in dust, slowly descended. The woman was wearing a blue palace dress. Her figure was graceful, and her face was covered with a veil. Only a pair of cold eyes could be seen. The man carried a long sword on his back. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, but his face was pale. He only had one arm left. These two were the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Fairy Meng Yao, who had come from the Heaven World. After the battle in the Jianmu mountain range, the two of them had lost face. Although he managed to survive, he had already lost all hope of reaching the Grotto Heaven realm. Over the years, the two of them had gradually lost their status in their respective sections. They were no longer core disciples. There were no celestial kings in the Flying Celestial Sect and Qingquan Academy who were willing to escort the two of them. After all, the current Sky Tribute world wasn't very attractive to celestial kings. Which immortal king would travel thousands of miles to the celestial tribute world for the sake of two crippled true disciples? The two of them had encountered many dangers along the way. Fortunately, their luck was good. In the end, they managed to escape danger and successfully arrived at the Sky Tribute world. When they descended from the sky and looked at the bustling scene on Sky Tribute Island, a trace of shock appeared on their faces. The top true spirits of the 3,000 worlds gathered on this island. Celestial kings could be seen everywhere. The meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds was a rare sight in the Heaven world, but it paled in comparison to what was happening in front of their eyes. Not far away, a dazzling golden light pierced through the air. A pair of golden wings slowly unfurled and unfurled, revealing a perfectly proportioned body. The golden feathers were like sharp swords that flickered with golden light. They illuminated the man's incomparably handsome face and added a hint of nobility to it. Look, it's the 9th prince of the golden-winged Great Rock King of the Peng world. As expected of the golden-winged Great Rock bloodline, he actually rushed over from the Peng world without the escort of the King of the Peng world. The golden-winged Great Rock bloodline is known as the fastest race. It's said that when the golden-winged Great Rock King uses his movement technique, even the starry sky black hole can't swallow him. The golden-winged Great Rock bloodline was the strongest bloodline in the Great Rock clan. The golden-winged Great Rock King was famous in the 3,000 worlds. Voila! On the other side, a young man wielding an azure trident arrived above Heaven Veneration Island. He gazed at the 9th prince, his eyes filled with battle intent. The appearance of this person caused another round of exclamations. It's the Kuan realm's #1 true spirit, Northern Mingyuan. I've heard that the Kuan world and Peng world have been in constant conflict for the past few years. This time, the supreme true spirits of these two worlds will probably have a fierce battle in the evil demon battlefield. Every time a Heaven's favorite arrived, the people on the island would exclaim and discuss. Meng Ya looked at this scene as she walked on Heavenly Worship Island. Aside from the shock in her heart, she felt even more emotional. If it weren't for the fact that her reputation had been completely destroyed, With her reputation as the Zither Immortal, once she appeared, she would definitely be the center of attention and attract countless admirers. She was supposed to get to know these supreme true spirits of the 3,000 worlds and drink with them. This was what she was best at. But now, she didn't even dare to reveal her true appearance, let alone make friends with these people. Beside her, the Moonlight Sword Immortal looked at the surrounding scenery and the true spirits descending from the sky from time to time. He was especially excited. He knew that he had made the right choice in coming to the Heaven Veneration world this time. Mengyao, I just heard that the Protoss's group has arrived. The Divine Son and Divine Daughter of the true first stage are also here. The Moonlight Sword Immortal couldn't hide the joy on his face. I've already asked for the address. Let's get ready and go visit them in a bit. Mengyao lowered her head and remained silent. She had a lot on her mind. What's wrong? The Moonlight Sword Immortal noticed Meng Yao's strange behavior and asked with a frown. Meng Yao sensed the hustle and bustle in the surroundings, and she felt like she didn't fit in with the heavenly Venerate Island. Coupled with the fact that there were so many prodigies and monstrous geniuses around her, she felt extremely disappointed and dispirited. A thought flashed through her mind. She wanted to leave this place quickly and return to the Flying Immortal sect, never to show her face again. I want to go back. Meng Yao suddenly said. Go back. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's face darkened. He could tell what Meng Yao was thinking and sneered. Where can you go back to? Go back to the Flying Immortal sect and continue to suffer the disdain and criticism of your fellow sect members? Continue to silently endure the cold treatment of the sect elders? Meng Yao narrowed her eyes and clenched her fists subconsciously. Although her fellow sect members hadn't said anything in front of her all these years, they had talked a lot behind her back. She was well aware of all this. Cold treatment, mockery, criticism. These words from the Moonlight Sword Immortal had indeed poked at the sore spot in Meng Yao's heart. The Moonlight Sword Immortal said, We're already here. Are we going to shrink back at the last minute? Regardless of whether we succeed or not, we have to give it a try. Look at these true spirit experts around you. Listen to the heaven's favorites they're talking about. The Moonlight Sword Immortal pointed around with an excited expression and said in high spirits, If we were in the Divine Firmament Immortal realm, how would we have the chance to see these supreme true spirits and come into contact with so many experts? Meng Yao, this is a rare opportunity for the two of us. If we seize this opportunity, not only will our injuries recover, but we can also use this opportunity to network and get to know the supreme true spirits of many super worlds. When we return to the Divine Firmament Immortal realm, who would dare to look down on us? Meng Yao was tempted by the Moonlight Sword Immortal's words. The Moonlight Sword Immortal continued, Although you and I have lost our reputation in the heaven domain, not many people in the 3,000 realms know about this. With your skills as the Guqin Immortal, you can amaze the world with just a few songs. Are you afraid that you won't be able to make friends with any supreme true spirits? Meng Yao nodded. A glimmer of light flashed across her eyes, and her confidence increased. Along the way, just by witnessing with their own eyes, they had seen several supreme true spirits that were the center of attention appear, causing countless exclamations of surprise. They had also heard the names of many supreme true spirits from the mouths of others. The number one true spirit of the Heavenly Eye race, and also the number one person on the Battle Merit Jade Tablet, Xia Yin. The supreme true spirit of the Stone race, Sherpa, Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden were of the same mind. When the two of them worked together, they were invincible among their peers. The Moonlight Sword Immortal said, And that's Su Zhu from the Sword World. She's young and only at the Kongming stage, but she has already become the peak master of the 9th Sword Peak. What kind of talent is this? Meng Yao nodded and said, I just heard that this Su Zhu killed the supreme true spirit of the Heavenly Eye race 1,000 years ago, when she was still at the Heavenly Human stage. She has a deep grudge with the Heavenly Eye race. I'm afraid there will be a battle this time. The Moonlight Sword Immortal said, No matter who wins or loses, if we have the chance to meet, we have to make friends with them. As a sword cultivator, I have quite a bit of experience in the Sword Dao. I should be able to talk to the peak master of the 9th Sword Peak. Meng Yao felt a surge of anticipation in her heart. She said, "I'll listen to you. Let's pay a visit to the Protoss first. If there's a chance to recover, everything will be fine." Chapter 2847. In the Celestial Tribute Realm, the residence of the Protoss. Nian Qi must have informed him earlier. After Su Zimo arrived and explained the purpose of his visit, a Protoss brought him to a house. Nian Qi had been waiting inside for a long time. When she saw Su Zimo arrive, she suppressed her excitement and joy and pretended to be calm. When the Protoss left, and only the two of them were left in the room, Nian Qi completely released the true emotions in her heart. Her eyes were red, and tears rolled down her cheeks. This separation had been too long for her. Over the years she was in the light world. Although she was surrounded by Protoss with the same blood flowing in her veins, she was never happy and could not find a sense of belonging. It was not until the moment she reunited with Su Zimo that her heart truly settled down. Su Zimo's gaze was gentle. Although Nian Qi had grown up, Su Zimo still looked at her the same way as before. There was no need for pleasantries between the two of them. After taking a seat, they each talked about their experiences after ascending. Nian Qi had set up restrictions around the room in advance with the help of the power of faith on the crown, so she was not afraid of others spying on them. The two of them reunited after a long separation and had countless things to say in their hearts. Unknowingly, a few hours had passed. From Nian Qi's mouth, Su Zimo heard some secrets about the light world. The light world had once given birth to a great emperor who founded the light era. Because of this, the light world's reputation and strength in the medium-class world had reached the peak, like the sun in the sky. However, legend had it that because of a catastrophe, the great emperor of light finally fell, causing the light world to decline. The reason why Su Zimo talked about this was because when Wu Dao's original body was transcending the 10th tribulation of the true martial tribulation, there were several humanoid tribulations that descended. One of them was blooming with golden light and surging with golden blood, very similar to the Protoss. Su Zimo could already confirm that a few of them were great emperors from the previous epoch. Through Nian Qi, Su Zimo was also certain that the figure that appeared in the heavenly tribulation of the true martial realm was the former great emperor of light. These great emperors seemed to have a common trait. He would not have a good ending. The fall of these great emperors was related to a calamity that swept through the 3,000 worlds and affected all living beings. Demon Master, Lord of Hell, Brahma Ghost Mother, Sinister Devil, Sinful Spirit, Celestial World, Celestial Court. If this catastrophe was caused by the Demon Lord, and the great emperors of the medium-class worlds fought against it, then what role did the Celestial Tribute World and the Celestial Court play in it? Fragments of information appeared in Su Zimo's mind. However, these fragments were still unable to piece together the final truth. While Su Zimo was deep in thought, Nian Qi continued. However, in the dark era after the radiant era, the radiant world rose rapidly again, once again becoming one of the super great realms. The Dark Age. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. In the 10th tribulation of Araki Takashi's heavenly tribulation, there was indeed a figure shrouded in darkness that accompanied the arrival of the radiant emperor. If one were to say that there had once been an era of darkness, that figure should be the Dark Emperor. It should be so. Since there was a radiant world in the 3,000 worlds, there should be a dark world. Su Zimo pondered for a while and suddenly asked, "There doesn't seem to be a dark world in the 3,000 worlds now." Nian Qi nodded and said, "After the fall of the Dark Emperor, the once prosperous dark world was completely annihilated in that calamity." This, Su Zimo was shocked. A world that had once given birth to a great emperor was erased from the upper realm, just like that, without leaving a trace. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. "Lord Nian Qi," someone called softly. "What's the matter?" Nian Qi frowned slightly. She and Su Zimo hadn't seen each other for a long time, and they still had a lot to talk about, so she didn't want to be disturbed. Naturally, she was unhappy when she heard the knock on the door. Nian Qi had the royal blood of the Protoss flowing in her body, so her status was indeed noble. The Protoss outside the door was quite respectful. He just stood at the door and said, "There are two perfected immortals from the heaven realm outside the door. They said that they came to visit the divine sun and goddess with gifts, and their attitude is quite sincere. Lord Minghui isn't here, so I came to ask Lord Nianqi some questions." No. Without even thinking, Nianqi rejected him casually. She didn't want to waste any time on these irrelevant people. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat when he heard that they were from the heaven realm. Could it be chess deity Junyu? But if it was Junyu, why would she come to visit the divine sun and goddess with gifts? This didn't seem like Junyu's style. Who are they from the heaven realm? Su Zimo asked casually. The Protoss outside replied, "I heard that they are from the divine firmament celestial realm. One of them is called Moonlight, and the other is called the Zither deity. She's one of the 4 great fairies of the heaven realm." Oh. Su Zimo raised his eyebrows slightly. "Young master, you know them?" Nianqi noticed Su Zimo's strange expression and asked softly, "Of course I know them." Su Zimo smiled and briefly explained the feud between the two of them. Then he said meaningfully, "Nianqi, it's good that you go and meet them." In the guest hall of the Protoss's residence, the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Mingyao waited patiently. They were quite nervous, as if the passage of time had slowed down a lot. After an unknown period of time, a woman in a golden robe walked out from the depths of the residence. She wore a golden crown on her head, and her beauty was flawless and noble. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's eyes lit up when he saw this person. Although he had never seen Nianqi before, he immediately recognized the identity of goddess Nianqi when he saw the Protoss's crown. The Moonlight Sword Immortal hurriedly got up and bowed slightly to Nianqi. "I'm Moonlight from the heaven realm. Greetings to Lord Nianqi. I've heard of your name for a long time, but I've never had the chance to meet you. Now that I've seen you today, you're indeed a peerless beauty." Mingyao felt nauseous when she heard this. The Moonlight Sword Immortal had only found out about Nianqi's name after arriving at Sky Worship Island. But now he was acting shamelessly. Mingyao also stood up and bowed. "I'm Mingyao from the heaven realm. Greetings to Lord Nianqi." Nianqi smiled and nodded to the two of them. He sat on the main seat and said casually, "I'm the one who's heard of your names." Before the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Mingyao could react, Nianqi said again, "Please take a seat." The Moonlight Sword Immortal was flattered when she heard this. "Lord Nianqi has heard of me?" The Moonlight Sword Immortal was secretly delighted and couldn't help but ask. She didn't expect that her name had already spread to the light world. Even the Moonlight Sword Immortal herself found it unbelievable. She didn't seem to have done anything shocking that could spread to the heaven realm, and even let a goddess know about her. "I've heard a friend mention it." Nianqi nodded slightly and said lightly. Chapter 2848. He had heard a friend mention it before. Nianqi's words made the Moonlight Sword Immortal's heart calm down. Originally, the Moonlight Sword Immortal did not have much confidence in this trip. But now, seeing Goddess Nianqi's attitude towards him, he suddenly felt more confident. At the side, Mingyao frowned. Her mind was more sensitive, and she vaguely felt that Goddess Nianqi's words seemed to have some deeper meaning. However, she could not figure it out at the moment. Nianqi said, "Fellow Taoist Su Zhu is here as a guest, so she came out a little late. Please forgive her." "Fellow Taoist Su Zhu?" The Moonlight Sword Immortal's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly asked, "Are you the Peak Master of the 9th Sword Peak?" "Yes." Nianqi nodded and asked, "You know her?" The Moonlight Sword Immortal smiled and raised her voice, saying, "Although I have never met fellow Taoist Su Zhu, who in the 3,000 realms doesn't know the name of the Peak Master of the 9th Sword Peak? Fellow Taoist Su Zhu and I are both sword cultivators, and can be considered as kindred spirits. It's a pity that we did not have the chance to meet. This time, I came to the celestial realm to find an opportunity to pay you a visit." Mingyao was also pleasantly surprised. The two of them were just talking about Su Zhu of the Sword Realm, but they did not expect to hear about Su Zhu of the Sword Realm from the Protoss. If they could make friends with fellow Taoist Su Zhu and the Protoss, it would be killing two birds with one stone. At this point, Mingyao also stood up and said, "I have admired fellow Taoist Su Zhu for a long time. Although I am not a sword cultivator, I am quite knowledgeable in the Tao of the Zither. If there is a chance, I am willing to play a song for Lord Nianqi and fellow Taoist Su Zhu. I hope you two can appreciate it. With Meng Yao's reputation as a Zither immortal, she had never been so humble as to take the initiative to play a song for others. But now, in order to get to know experts in the celestial realm and make connections, she could not care less. Nianqi smiled but did not say anything. The Moonlight Sword Immortal coughed lightly and said, "This may be a little presumptuous, but if fellow Taoist Su Zhu is here, why don't you invite him out so that we can meet him in person?" "Sure." Nianqi casually agreed. The Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao were overjoyed. "We'll talk about this later." Nianqi suddenly changed the topic and asked, "Why are you here?" The Moonlight Sword Immortal immediately retracted her smile and said seriously, "The immortal sects that the two of us belong to in the heaven realm are righteous sections. We take it upon ourselves to uphold justice and slay demons and devils. Who would have thought that we would be severely injured by a great devil who would stop at nothing and suffer eternal damnation?" Alas, the Moonlight Sword Immortal sighed. She grabbed her empty sleeve and said, "That demon has sinister intentions. He intentionally spared our lives and used his divine power to destroy our minds and wills. He wants us to submit to him." Naturally, he had prepared this speech long ago. His goal was to gain the sympathy of the Protoss. Meng Yao also said, "Back then, I had a Zither duel with the Zither demon. It was a fair competition of Zither skills. However, the Zither demon lost and became angry out of humiliation. The great demon behind the Zither demon attacked and injured me." Of course, these words were also distorting the truth. Back then, in the battle under the Jianmu mountain, the Zither immortal lost and became angry out of humiliation. She wanted to sneak up on the Zither demon, Chiu Siluo, but was stopped by Araki Takashi and slapped in the face. Such details were probably only seen by those who were present. The Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao dared to speak without thinking, because they were certain that Goddess Nianqi, who was far away in the light world, would not know the details of the battle in the Jianmu mountain range. Nianqi said, "In that case, what happened to the two of you is indeed regrettable. This girl looks so young. She is indeed easy to deceive." The Moonlight Sword Immortal saw that Nianqi's tone was friendly and secretly rejoiced. She continued, "We heard that the royal family of the Protoss is skilled in a kind of healing technique. It is unparalleled in the world, and can remove the divine power left behind by eternal damnation. Therefore, we came here to plead with Lord Nianqi to help us get rid of the pain of eternal damnation." As she approached, the Moonlight Sword Immortal hurriedly took off her storage bag and said, "I have already prepared a generous gift. Please kindly accept it, Lord Nianqi." Meng Yao also hurriedly handed over the storage bag she had prepared. Nianqi did not take it. He only smiled and asked, "If the two of you recover from your injuries, what do you plan to do next?" Hearing the words recover from their injuries, the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao were excited. From Goddess Nianqi's tone, it seemed that she wanted to help them. The Moonlight Sword Immortal hurriedly knelt down and saluted Nianqi. She said with a respectful expression, "If Lord Nianqi is willing to help us heal our injuries, I am willing to listen to Lord Nianqi's orders from now on without any objections." When Meng Yao saw the Moonlight Sword Immortal kneeling on the ground, she could not stand aside and could only force herself to kneel down. The Moonlight Sword Immortal continued, "Of course, if I recover from my injuries, the first thing I will do is to return to the heaven realm and seek revenge on that demon." However, the Moonlight Sword Immortal had other thoughts. Now that she had said all the good things, if she recovered from her injuries, she would have a chance to advance to the Grotto Heaven Realm and become a celestial king when she returned to the Heaven Realm. As for the matter of being sent to the Heaven Realm as mentioned today, it naturally did not happen. Revenge? A hint of imperceptible mockery flashed across Nianqi's eyes. He asked, "Can you defeat him?" "I." The Moonlight Sword Immortal opened her mouth. That insufferably arrogant and invincible figure under the builder tree appeared in her mind. She once again felt immense pressure, as if a nightmare was shrouding her, and her heart palpitated. The words that were about to come out of her mouth could not be said for a moment. At the side, Meng Yao's expression was cold. She suddenly said, "We can't defeat that demon now, but we can cut off his wings first." That demon established the Heaven Baron sect in the demon territory of the Heaven Realm. It is full of heinous demon cultivators. If we can recover from our injuries and regain our battle strength, we must destroy that Heaven Baron sect. Of course, Meng Yao wanted to do more than that. She wanted to destroy the Heaven Baron sect and kill the Guqin demon. The Guqin demon had already become her inner demon. Only by killing the Guqin demon would she have a chance to advance further. She wanted to take back everything that belonged to her. Destroy the Heaven Baron sect, Nian Qi said faintly, expressionless. When the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao heard Nian Qi's tone, they felt that something was wrong. Before the two of them could react, they heard Nian Qi say, "The two of you just wanted to meet fellow Taoist Suzhu, right?" "Yes." The Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao hurriedly nodded. Nian Qi said, "He's already here. He's right behind you." Ah! The Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao were shocked. From the corner of their eyes, they did catch a glimpse of a figure sitting not far behind them. When did this person enter the hall and sit there? The two of them did not notice at all. The two of them were surprised and delighted. They hurriedly turned their heads and raised their hands. Just as they were about to bow, they suddenly froze on the spot and widened their eyes. The surprise from just now disappeared instantly. It was replaced by endless shock. Chapter 2849. That person had black hair and was dressed in a green robe. He had delicate features and was sitting on the chair like a weak scholar in the mortal world. He was looking at the two of them with a smile on his face. Hiss! When the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao saw this person, it was as if they had seen a ghost. They were so frightened that they sucked in a breath of cold air. Their hair stood on end, and their scalps tingled. You. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's voice trembled slightly. She seemed to have countless words to say in her heart, but she could not say a single word. Meng Yao's face also turned pale. What's going on? Suzimo? Wasn't this person sent to the Emperor's tomb by the Patriarch of the Academy and killed? Suzimo and Suzhu are actually the same person? How can this be? How did he become the Peak Master of the Ninth Sword Peak? Why is he here? What is his relationship with Goddess Nian Qi? Countless questions exploded in her mind. Meng Yao only felt that her mind was in a mess. She could not figure it out no matter how hard she tried. Suzimo sat there while the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao knelt on the ground. The three of them looked at each other. The entire hall suddenly became absolutely silent. The Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao suddenly realized that the ant that they thought they could easily trample to death had grown to such a level. You really shouldn't have come. Suzimo slowly got up and looked at the two of them calmly. The two of them had a deep grudge and could not tolerate each other like fire and water. He did not intend to be polite with them. His first sentence revealed his killing intent. Back in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain, the two of them had plotted to kill him several times. In the end, it was Wu Dao's real body that attacked and severely injured them. Moreover, the two of them knew that he was Qinglian's real body. All the more he could not let the two of them leave alive. Both the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Meng Yao were vengeful people. When Nian Qi asked them what they planned to do after their injuries recovered, the two of them did not hide their intentions. Meng Yao even threatened to attack the Heaven Baron sect. Suzimo would not give them any more chances. You are Suzhu. The Moonlight Sword Immortal stood up with a thud, her expression constantly changing as she stared fixedly at Suzimo and gritted her teeth. Although he had come to his senses, he could not understand how the so-called Peak Master of the Ninth Sword Peak in Sword World was actually Suzimo. It was said that when Suzimo died, he had just stepped into the True One realm. It had only been a few years, and he had already reached the Kongming stage. The Moonlight Sword Immortal would never associate the Sword World Peak Master at the Kongming stage with a dead person like Suzimo. Suzimo walked slowly towards the two of them. What do you want? The Moonlight Sword Immortal looked at the approaching Suzimo, and her heart trembled. She put on a brave front and shouted, "This is the Celestial Tribute Realm. Private fights are not allowed. This is a private residence." Su Zimo said indifferently. Killing people here is invalid according to the rules of the celestial tribute realm. In just a few breaths' time, the Moonlight Sword Immortal was already sweating profusely. Hearing this, he was so frightened that his legs turned to jelly. If it was the old him, perhaps he would not be like this. But now, he had been tortured beyond redemption for many years. His injuries had yet to heal, and he had lost an arm. Facing Su Zimo, who was also the peak master of the 9th sword peak in Sword World, and a ruthless person who had killed a supreme true spirit, he was already scared out of his wits. Su Zimo, junior brother Su. The Moonlight Sword Immortal changed the way he addressed Su Zimo 3 times in a row, trying hard to squeeze out a smile. The previous grudge was really a misunderstanding. Su Zimo did not seem to hear anything, and continued to walk forward, getting closer and closer to the two. His footsteps were neither light nor heavy, but when they fell into the Moonlight Sword Immortal's ears, it was like a death sentence from hell. Lord Nianqi, I beg you. Seeing that Su Zimo was unmoved, the Moonlight Sword Immortal turned to look at Nianqi in a panic, and said somewhat incoherently, "This is the Protoss, he's in Sword World. Ah no, it's heaven. He can't kill people here." Nianqi looked down at the Moonlight Sword Immortal with a cold expression. "I forgot to tell you something. I also came from Tianhuang mainland in the lower realm. I've been with young master for many years, and I see him as my most important kin. If you make him your enemy, you're making me your enemy." This sentence was equivalent to extinguishing the last hope in the Moonlight Sword Immortal's heart. Meng Yao was originally standing at the side with her head lowered, as if she had already accepted her fate. But after hearing Nianqi's words, a murderous intent suddenly flashed in her lowered eyes. Meng Yao turned around abruptly, and with a move, she pounced toward Nianqi, who was sitting on the high seat behind her. Her speed was astonishing. Since the two of them had been together for many years in the lower realm, it meant that Nianqi was equally important to Su Zimo. Although Su Zimo was only at the Kongming stage, he had killed a supreme true spirit after all. His fierce reputation was too great, and Meng Yao did not dare to fight with him. But the goddess Nianqi behind her had only just stepped into the true self stage. As long as she could restrain Nianqi at the first moment, Su Zimo could be wary of her. This might be her only chance at survival. She did not want to die, nor did she want to lose. At least she could not lose to Su Zimo, someone she had once regarded as an aunt. Meng Yao's movement technique was very fast. This time, she had released almost all of her strength. But no matter how fast his movement technique was, he was not as fast as a jade green sword light. A jade green sword light flashed, and although it was launched later, it arrived first and sank into Meng Yao's body. Poof! Accompanied by a spurt of blood, the sword light instantly pierced through her chest. Meng Yao's body swayed. She looked at the goddess Nianqi, who was close at hand, but she could not gather any strength in her body. Her qi and blood were rapidly dissipating. The sword wound on her chest was not fatal. However, the terrifying sword intent contained within this sword light suddenly exploded within her body. Deathly stillness, gloominess, lethargy instantly enveloped her entire body. In a daze, she felt as if she had been buried in a tomb. Her life force was rapidly flowing away, and her eyes were filled with despair and unwillingness. Meng Yao could not hold on any longer, and she fell limply to the ground. Bang! A muffled sound was heard by Meng Yao's ear. Immediately after, there was the sound of bones cracking. The Moonlight Sword Immortal's figure fell to the ground, rolled a few times and came to her side. The next moment, the footsteps that sounded like the god of death were heard again. Not long after, that familiar figure and face appeared in front of the two of them. He looked down at the two people, who were lying on the ground like dead dogs. "I can't accept this." The veil on Meng Yao's face had long been torn apart by the sword qi, revealing her scarred face. She glared at Su Zimo with hatred. Because she was too strong, the wounds on her face were slightly red. When they gathered together, she looked even more ferocious. "What's there to be unhappy about?" Su Zimo's tone was calm. "If I had not been injured by Araki Takashi, you might not have been able to defeat me in today's battle." Meng Yao gritted her teeth. "Su Zimo, don't be so smug. I lost to Araki Takashi, but I did not lose to you. I am the Zither Immortal. How can I lose to a servant like you? Who do you think Araki Takashi is? Suzumo asked indifferently. Mengyao was stunned. She did not understand what Suzumo meant. The next moment, 2 balls of purple flame slowly appeared in Suzumo's eyes. In a daze, that peerless and invincible purple-robed figure gradually overlapped with the handsome scholar in front of her. Chapter 2850. It's him, it's actually him. Araki Takashi. How could it be? Scenes flashed before Mingyao's eyes, as if she had returned to the Dragon Abyss planet, when she first met Suzumo. At that time, Suzumo was like an ant that she could casually trample to death. She did not even have a deep impression of this ant. She would never have thought that after so many years, that weak ant would grow to such an extent that she had to look up to him. On the Dragon Abyss planet, Suzumo, the Moonlight Sword Immortal, and Mengyao met for the first time. And now, it was the 3 of them again. Everything was like reincarnation. The grudges between the 3 of them would finally come to an end at this moment. At this moment, Suzumo's expression changed, and he glanced sideways, as if he had sensed something. Stop! A stern shout came from outside the main hall. The Moonlight Sword Immortal had been beaten by Suzumo until his bones were broken, his chi and blood were scattered, and his vitality was waning. Hearing this voice, a ball of vitality burst forth from his eyes again, and he used the last of his strength to shout loudly, "Save me!" Suzumo's expression was indifferent, and he was unmoved. He flicked his fingertips lightly. 2 extremely sharp sword chi instantly sank into the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Mingyao's glabella, piercing through their primordial spirits. Immediately after, a man in golden armor and holding a giant sword walked into the main hall. He looked at the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Mengyao, who had just been killed by Suzumo, with a gloomy expression. Nianqi frowned, and his expression was grave. He hurriedly sent a message to Suzumo with his divine sense, saying, "It's Divine Sun Minghui. How dare you kill people in the territory of the Protoss?" Divine Sun Minghui stared at Suzumo, and the chi and blood in his body rose, bursting forth with golden light. He raised the giant sword in his hand, and his killing intent sword. "Minghui, this is a misunderstanding." Nianqi moved, and stood in front of Suzumo. He opened his arms and said to Minghui, "These 2 from the heaven realm came to visit, but they had ill intentions and wanted to attack me. It was Taoist Suju who saved me." These words were not nonsense. Earlier, Mengyao had indeed wanted to kidnap Nianqi to threaten Suzumo. Oh! Divine Sun Minghui didn't put down the giant sword in his hand. He pointed at Suzumo from afar, and the murderous intent in his eyes didn't dissipate. He asked, "I asked you to stop. Why didn't you listen to me?" "Who are you?" Suzumo asked calmly. Divine Sun Minghui's expression turned cold as he said slowly, "Suju, do you believe that I can kill you right now? You won't be able to leave this place alive." "You can try." Suzumo's tone was still calm, but his words were tit for tat, and he didn't back down. Divine Sun Minghui had been catching up with a few supreme true spirits outside. When he heard that Nianqi had met an old friend in the celestial tribute world and acted very intimately, he hurried back. Therefore, even if the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Mengyao didn't appear, he was still full of hostility towards Suzumo. He had long regarded Nianqi as one of his own. Any appearance of the opposite sex around Nianqi would alert him. Suzumo naturally didn't care about Divine Sun Minghui's threat. He wasn't afraid of any opponents of the same level. This was the Protoss private residence. Even if the Protoss kings were to attack, Suzumo was confident that he could escape unscathed. In the celestial tribute world, he couldn't release his Grotto Heaven. Without the restrictions of the Grotto Heaven, even a divine king couldn't trap him. "Minghui, you can't blame Taoist Suju for this." Nianqi looked at Divine Sun Minghui and emphasized each word. Divine Sun Minghui didn't say a word, and just stared at Suzumo without blinking. The more Nianqi protected Suzumo, the more murderous his heart was. Both sides were in a deadlock for a while. Divine Sun Minghui suddenly put away his giant sword and laughed. "There will be plenty of time in the future. I'll have the chance to experience your sword Dao. After saying that, Divine Sun Minghui didn't bother and turned to leave. Nianqi, I'll go back first. The two chatted for a long time. After this incident, Su Zimo couldn't continue to stay in the Protoss. I'll send you off. Nianqi escorted Su Zimo out of the Protoss residence and warned, Young master, you have to be careful of Minghui. This person is narrow-minded. Although he didn't make things difficult for you today, I'm afraid he has other tricks up his sleeve. It's okay. Su Zimo smiled and said, Whatever tricks he has, I'll take them all. On the other side, Divine Sun Minghui left the meeting hall and stopped smiling. He squinted his eyes and looked gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. Lord Minghui. The divine servant who had followed him for many years came out and saw Divine Sun Minghui's intention. He asked in a low voice, Why didn't you kill Su Zhu just now? Divine Sun Minghui shook his head slightly and said, Kill, I have to kill him. But now isn't the best time to kill him. After all, he's the peak master of the 9th Sword Peak. If he dies in the Protoss residence, even if it's a fair fight, it'll be easy for people to talk about it. Moreover, Nianqi is here. If I attack Su Zhu, Nianqi will definitely stop me. I'm afraid it'll be over in the end. The divine servant thought for a while and said, My lord, you mean to attack him in the evil demon battlefield? Yes, Divine Sun Minghui said. Nianqi won't enter the evil demon battlefield this time. No matter what happens in the evil demon battlefield, outsiders can't interfere. Moreover, if I kill him openly in front of everyone, the Sword Realm can only admit defeat. It's all because Su Zhu's sword Dao isn't good enough, and his skills are inferior. After pausing for a while, Divine Sun Minghui's eyes flashed and the corners of his mouth curled up. He said, Moreover, I don't have to do it myself if I want to kill him. Oh, the divine servant looked confused and asked, What do you mean, my lord? The two people who died just now are from the Heaven Realm. Divine Sun Minghui said, Later, you will spread the news that they died under Su Zhu's sword. As far as I know, a supreme true spirit from the Heaven Realm is now on Celestial Worship Island. Needless to say, the divine servant understood. His eyes lit up and said, My lord, you want to kill with a borrowed knife? Divine Sun Minghui smiled and nodded. The divine servant then frowned slightly and said in a low voice, However, as far as I know, there are 3 domains in the Heaven Realm. Just the celestial domain alone is called the 9 Heavens Immortal Domain. There are many sects and forces that fight for themselves. If the 2 people who died just now have nothing to do with the supreme true spirit from the Heaven Realm, she might not avenge them, right? Haha, you don't know this. Divine Sun Minghui chuckled and asked, Who is the supreme true spirit from the Heaven Realm? Do you know? I heard it was a woman named Junyu. She was dressed like a Taoist nun and carried a huge square chessboard on her back. The divine servant answered. Divine Sun Minghui said, This Junyu has another title. She is one of the 4 fairies in the Heaven Realm, the chess deity. And the one who died just now is another one of the 4 fairies, the zither deity. Ah, the divine servant suddenly understood. Divine Sun Minghui smiled and said, Both of them are from the divine firmament immortal domain, and are among the 4 fairies. Would you believe me if I said they had nothing to do with each other? I heard that the chess deity is extremely belligerent. Now that the zither deity is dead, how could the chess deity sit by and do nothing? When the time comes, we just need to watch the show from the sidelines. My lord is brilliant, the divine servant praised. Chapter 2851. Su Zimo had only taken care of the Moonlight Sword Immortal, and Mingyao in passing. He had another goal in mind for this trip to the Sky Tribute world. Moreover, the Moonlight Sword Immortal and Mingyao were no longer a threat to him. They weren't strong opponents at all. On the way back to Sword World's residence, many cultivators noticed him and whispered among themselves with odd expressions. Have you heard? The Heavenly Eye clan has also arrived in the Sky Tribute world. Xia Yin, first on the Jade Steel of War merit, is also here. He's announced that he's going to kill Su Zhu of Sword World's 9th peak in the Fiend battlefield. I wonder how many rounds he can last against Xia Yin. That'll depend on when Xia unleashes his full strength. If he uses the 6 paths of reincarnation right away, he'll probably end the battle in one round. Su Zimo remained calm under the crowd's watchful gazes, without the slightest hint of pressure before a great battle. The Sky Tribute Worlds opening this time had gathered the true spirit experts of all 3,000 worlds. Several great battles had been brewing over the past few days, and had become a hot topic of discussion. The most heated topic was, of course, the battle between the true spirits of the 3,000 worlds and the sinful spirits. When the time came, a bloody battle would erupt on the fiend battlefield. It was very likely that all 10 of the great fiends would die in this battle. The clash between Fengzi, the Phoenix Maiden, and the Dragon's Girl, Longli, was also the focus of everyone's attention. There was also the battle between the 2 true spirits of the Kuan and Peng realms. The enmity between the Stone Clan and Sword World. True spirits from the Blood Realm, Golden Crow Realm, Barbarian Realm, Shaman Realm, and other super major realms, even the Giant Realm, Poison Realm, Tomb Realm, Star Realm, and other higher realms had arrived. Currently, there were already more than 100 supreme true spirits gathered on Heaven Venerate Island. The battle between Su Zimo and the top true spirit of the Heavenly Eye clan Xia was also one of the most anticipated battles. When Su Zimo returned to Sword World's residence, Lu Yun and the other peak lords, as well as Lin Xuanjin, Yin Ting, and the other disciples of Sword World, gathered around him. Lu Yun and the others wore grave expressions. Brother Su, Xia of the Celestial Eye clan has arrived. There's still time to return to the Sword World. Once we enter the evil demon battlefield, no matter what happens inside, we won't be able to help. I'm fine. Su Zimo smiled and said, everyone relax. Just watch the battle from the outside. Lu Yun and the others were even more nervous than Su Zimo. Yulan muttered, the situation this time is unprecedented. All the true spirit realm experts of the 3,000 worlds have gathered, and more than 100 supreme true spirits have entered the battlefield at the same time. There are too many variables. Originally, if you were to join hands with Sun Jun, there shouldn't be any danger in the demonic battlefield. However, it would appear that it is very hard to say. Although Xia is the only true spirit left of the Celestial Eye clan, the Stone Clan will also have their eyes on you. Xuanjin might not be able to help you then. In the end, you may still have to face Xia alone. Don't worry about me. I only have one request. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to Lin Xuanjin. If you see that the situation isn't right, take out the Sky Tribute Medallion and leave immediately. Don't hesitate. This, Lin Xuanjin frowned slightly and opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something. Su Zimo waved a hand. If something really happens that I can't handle, you'll only distract me if you stay. Take care of yourself. Seeing that Su Zimo had made up his mind, the others didn't try to persuade him otherwise. Time trickled by. More and more true spirit realm experts gathered in the Sky Tribute world. As time went on, the number of true spirits that had arrived gradually reached saturation. At this moment, an emotionless voice resounded above Heaven Venerate Island. True spirits of all worlds, prepare yourselves. The demonic battlefield is about to open. Whoosh! The crowd on Sky Tribute Island boiled over. In an instant, countless true spirit realm experts left their residences and surged toward Sky Tribute Pavilion like carps crossing the river. Among them were true spirits preparing to enter the demonic battlefield, but even more were spectators. In the blink of an eye, the Sky Tribute Square was filled with people. It was a dark mass of people packed with people. The restrictions on entering the demonic battlefield were still the same. Only 10 people could enter each world. This way, the strength of the various worlds could be balanced to the greatest extent, and there wouldn't be a situation of relying on numbers to hunt on a large scale in the demonic battlefield. Not long after the Sword World group arrived, a commotion came from the crowd behind. As though they felt some immense deterrence, the originally crowded crowd actually retreated to the sides, opening up a path. Not far away, the Heavenly Eye race group slowly walked over. Their leader was dressed in black and white Taoist robes. His long hair fluttered, and his face was as sharp as a knife. His expression was cold, and his eyes were tightly shut. However, his direction wasn't wrong at all, as he headed straight for the Sword World group. There was a blood scar on that person's glabella that emitted a shuddering aura. The surrounding true spirits merely caught a glimpse of that blood scar by accident, and were alarmed, feeling as though their gazes and spirit consciousnesses were about to be devoured by that blood scar. Even the bloodlines in their bodies were stirring, as though they were about to burst out of their bodies. How terrifying! That's the eye of reincarnation! Exclamations came from the crowd. Many true spirits closed their eyes one after another. Over the past few days, more and more information about Xia had appeared. It was said that the Heavenly Eye race had 3 major ocular techniques: the Eye of Destruction, the Double Pupil, and the Eye of Reincarnation. Among them, the Eye of Reincarnation was the strongest. Xia had yet to truly comprehend the 6 paths of reincarnation. He had merely used the yin-yang eye to break through the barrier of yin and yang, and caught a glimpse of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Thereafter, Xia made use of that experience to cultivate his heavenly eye into the Eye of Reincarnation. In other words, Xia had used his heavenly eye to channel the supreme power of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Seeing was better than hearing about it. Xia Yin's name had long spread throughout the 3,000 worlds. It was only at this moment that the true spirits truly felt how terrifying the person who ranked first on the battle merit Jade Steel was. The pressure that came from him was suffocating. World of Wudong. A man in a scarlet robe frowned slightly when he saw the bloodstain between Xia Yin's brows. A ball of fire gradually appeared in his phoenix eyes. He actually felt a slight stab of pain in his eyes. The woman beside him suddenly reached out her hand. Their palms touched, and 2 balls of fire appeared in the eyes of the man and woman. The stab of pain in the man's eyes disappeared. Of course, there were some true spirits in the crowd who could withstand the pressure. In fact, there were even some people that were able to maintain their calm when facing Xia Yin. Su Zimo was one of them. He looked at the bloodstain between Xia Yin's brows and tilted his head slightly. A hint of interest even appeared on his face, as though he was deep in thought. Right at this moment, Xia Yin suddenly opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, it was as though heaven and earth had just opened. His gaze locked onto Su Zimo. Chapter 2852. Xia Yin's eyes, one black and one white, exuded a mysterious power that seemed to shift yin and yang, turning heaven and earth upside down. Don't look at his eyes. The voices of the various kings sounded from the crowd, reminding the true spirits behind them. Xia Yin's yin and yang eyes didn't look at anyone else, only at Su Zimo. As long as Su Zimo dodged a little, Su Zimo would be at a disadvantage in their first clash. When the two met again in the Fiend battlefield, Xia Yin would have the psychological advantage. The battle between the two had already begun the moment Xia Yin stepped into Sky Tribute Square. However, it was unexpected. Su Zimo didn't dodge or wait. He only looked at Xia Yin with a smile that wasn't a smile, thinking of something interesting. Xia Yin frowned imperceptibly. He was indeed surprised by Su Zimo's reaction. Although he hadn't released the true power of his yin and yang eyes just now, his eyes contained the power of yin and yang. If an ordinary true spirit's gaze were to come into contact with it, their vision and mind would be affected. If they kept staring at his yin and yang eyes, they might even go blind. However, Su Zimo's eyes were clear as he looked at his yin and yang eyes. From beginning to end, there wasn't the slightest ripple in his eyes. He wasn't affected at all. This was a bit strange. Xia Yin naturally didn't know that Su Zimo's eyes each hid two mysterious stones, Zhu Zhao and Yuing. If one said that Xia Yin's eyes only contained a wisp of yin and yang power, Zhu Zhao and Yuing were the ancestors of yin and yang. After all, they were still in Sky Tribute Square, so it was impossible for the two to have a real confrontation. Xia Yin didn't get any benefits, so he withdrew his gaze and pointed at a giant screen in the square, saying, "Su Zhu, I'll wait for you in the 7th area of the Fiend battlefield." Everyone's spirits rose when they heard this. The Fiend battlefield had a total of 10 areas. Normally speaking, the true spirits of the 3,000 worlds would land in different areas. The battle between the two could be said to be the focus of everyone's attention. If the two of them had landed in different regions and wanted to meet in the demonic battlefield, who knew how long they would have had to wait? The people on the battlefield might not have had the chance to personally witness this unparalleled battle between two supreme true spirits. Now, if both sides agreed to fight in District 7, everyone would have a target. Once they entered the demonic battlefield and rushed to District 7 at the same time, they would have a chance to see this battle. Su Zimo smiled but said nothing. Xiaolei, don't worry, I'll give you a fair chance to fight. If you're not confident, you can team up with Lin Xuanjin. I'll take both of you on. Whoosh! There was a commotion in the crowd. Xia Yin's words were too domineering and confident. He wanted to fight two supreme true spirits by himself. If someone else had said this, it might have attracted some doubt. But when it came from Xia Yin's mouth, everyone felt that it was reasonable. You can't catch it. Su Zimo said calmly. Huh? Xia Yin raised his head and laughed out loud, as if he had heard the most interesting thing in the world. Exclamation point. A sneer came from the Blood Realm. The leader was wearing a red robe and holding a folding fan in his hand. He was the supreme true spirit of the Blood Vine race, Xuewen. The Blood Realm was also a super realm. Xuewen was also an expert on the Battle Merit Jade Tablet and had some reputation in the 3,000 worlds. Brother Xuewen, what are you laughing at? Divine Sun Minghui was familiar with Xuewen, so he pretended not to know. Xuewen pursed his lips and waved his folding fan. He said leisurely, some people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They really think that they can compete with Brother Xia, just because they've comprehended a supreme divine power. They don't know that they're nothing more than a clown. Oh! Divine Sun Minghui pretended to be surprised and asked, Brother Xue, you don't think highly of the Ninth Sword Peak Master? Brother Xue, he's a peak master with a noble status, and looks down on everyone. A few days ago, he even killed 2 cultivators from the heaven world at my place. He's very arrogant. Of course, I think highly of him. Xuewen smiled mysteriously and changed the topic. I think highly of him, but he'll be killed by Brother Xia within 10 moves. Sherpa from the Stone Realm, who had a grudge with the Sword Realm, grinned and said, I bet that he'll die within 5 moves. Haha. Divine Sun Minghui laughed loudly. The true spirits of the 3,000 worlds were gathered there, and not many of them thought highly of Su Zimo. Moreover, Su Zimo was a junior who had risen in the past 1,000 years. He didn't know most of the supreme true spirits present, let alone be friends with them. Everyone was just watching the show. I think you're the clown. At that moment, a soft shout came from the crowd. Everyone looked toward the source of the voice. Xuewen frowned. The voice was obviously directed at him. The person who spoke was from the Flower Realm. Su Zimo also looked over and saw immortal King Yulan, whom he had met once in the Celestial Tribute Realm, smiling at him and nodding. The woman who spoke was standing beside Yulan, Immortal Emperor. She had a beautiful appearance with a hint of heroism. She seemed to be her disciple. Su Zimo's divine sense moved and felt a familiar aura from the woman. The Qinglian clan? A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Yulan whispered. That should be Immortal King Yulan's disciple Mulian. Although she's a woman, she has a reputation for heroism. Her clan should have a deep grudge with the Blood Realm. Beauty, what did you just say? When Xuewen saw that it was a beauty who spoke, the anger on his face disappeared instantly. He licked his lips and asked with a smile. Mulian sneered and said, no matter how weak Taoist Su Zhu is, she once killed 10 opponents of the same level with her sword, including a supreme true spirit. Who do you think you are? Taoist Su Zhu at least dares to fight with Xia Yin, but you don't even have the guts to fight with Xia Yin. You're the real clown that's spouting nonsense over there. Xuewen was not angry and said with a cheeky smile. Beauty, do you want to make a bet? If Brother Xia defeats Su Zhu in 10 moves, you'll come over and apologize to me. How about it? What if Taoist Su Zhu survives 10 moves? Mulian looked at Xuewen's smiling face and felt disgusted. She made up her mind and asked loudly. If I lose, you can do whatever you want with me. Xuewen had absolute confidence in Xia Yin, so he naturally had no scruples. Sister Mulian, you'd better not bet with him. At this moment, a young girl's voice sounded from the dragon's side. It was Longli. Longli said seriously, "Even if you win, that Shuewen won't admit defeat. I heard that he's most famous for being stubborn and thick-skinned." "Little girl, what did you say?" Shuewen's expression darkened as he asked with a frown. Longli was not afraid. She shrugged and said, "I heard that you once obtained an ancient body refinement method called the copper skin and iron bone method. However, your Bloodvine clan is born with weak knees and no bones, so you can only cultivate the copper skin method. That's why your skin is as thick as a city wall." Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, there was a burst of laughter from the crowd. Shuewen's reputation was indeed bad in the 3,000 realms, and the cultivation method he cultivated was also true. However, this interpretation, when spoken by a young girl's innocent voice, made people laugh. Chapter 2853. Who did you hear that from? Shuewen's face flushed as he listened to the laughter around him. He stared at Longli and questioned, "My mother." Longli answered crisply without hesitation, "Your mother." Shuewen opened his mouth to curse, but he suddenly felt an extremely cold killing intent. His heart went cold, and he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. This girl's mother seemed to be the Nightmare Dragon King. Shuewen's gaze shifted, and saw a silver-haired girl beside Longli looking at him coldly without saying a word. "Little girl, I won't lower myself to your level." Shuewen let out a cold snort. After saying that, he no longer said anything. The dragon world was a super major world after all. He could bully and tease the girls of the flower world as he pleased, but he was extremely wary of the dragons. There weren't many dragons in the dragon world, but it was a super major world, and ranked at the top of the 10,000 races. Although the Bloodvine race was also a super major world, they didn't dare cross swords with the dragons. She's right. He's indeed a weakling. He shriveled on the spot when he met the dragons. It's true that he's stubborn. It's said that he cultivated something called the sharp-tongue sword. Not only is he stubborn, but he can also shoot out sword chi from his mouth. It's also very famous for being a sharp tongue. Whispers could be heard from the crowd. Shuewen's expression was dark, and he didn't say a word. His gaze roamed over Mulien, and he sneered from time to time. He couldn't provoke the people of the dragons, but he couldn't touch this girl from the flower world. If he entered the fiend battlefield, he would show the 10,000 races what he was capable of. Su Zimo didn't participate in this ruckus. His attention was on the crowd in Sky Tribute Square. Strangely, he hadn't seen any true spirits of the Great Wilderness Domain arrive in the past few days. He had asked Lu Yin and the others, but they didn't know much. They only guessed that the Great Wilderness Domain was in chaos, due to the flames of war. Many true spirits couldn't even take care of themselves and couldn't leave. Su Zimo looked around, and didn't see Chess Goddess Junyu. At this moment, the emotionless voice sounded in Sky Tribute Square again. "The fiend battlefield is officially open." Whoosh! The 10 giant screens around the square began to emit rays of light. The teleportation formations below also began to light up. "Be careful." Lu Yun and the others looked at Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin, and reminded them once more. Under the gazes of the crowd, the true spirit experts from the 3,000 worlds stepped onto the teleportation array, and disappeared from the Sky Tribute Plaza. Not long after, more than half of the figures in Sky Tribute Square had disappeared. The rest were either true spirits of lower realms, or a group of kings. The camps of the Sky and Stone clans sandwiched Lu Yun's group in the middle. The Stonefiend king of the Stonefiend clan stretched out a hand, and lightly chopped at his neck, taunting the Stonefiend clan, and waiting for a good show. The Cold Eye king looked at Lu Yun and the others, the blood mark between his brows glinting with a bloody light. He grinned. "Lu Yun, perhaps you still have a sliver of hope in your heart, thinking that Su Zhu has the medallion, and can leave at any time if things go south." Lu Yun and the others looked on coldly, not saying a word. That was indeed what they were thinking. The Cold Eye king sighed faintly. "Unfortunately, you've misjudged the determination of the Sky Eye clan, and underestimated the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation." Lu Yun frowned, his heart sinking as if he'd thought of something. The Cold Eye king continued. "As long as the two meet, Xia Yin won't test the waters, nor will he give Su Zhu any chance. He'll directly open his heavenly eye and release the 6 paths of reincarnation. Even if Su Zhu has the medallion, he won't be able to use it in time. He won't be able to escape the restraints of the 6 paths of reincarnation, and can only die. Lu Yin and the others from Sword World paled when they heard this. The kings of the other realms also frowned, and whispered among themselves. The vast majority of supreme true spirits only comprehended one supreme divine ability. In the middle of a great battle, if they used a true spirit art, they wouldn't be able to use it a second time in a short period of time. Therefore, generally speaking, using a true spirit art was even more cautious than using a true spirit art. If Xia Yin had opened his heavenly eye and released the 6 paths of reincarnation at the beginning of the battle with Su Zimo, the battle would have ended in an extremely short period of time. This battle might not have been an earth-shattering spectacle, but it might have just been a one-sided crushing. These thoughts surfaced in the minds of the kings of the various realms. Some rejoiced in Lu Yun's misfortune, some secretly lamented, and some held a trace of anticipation. At this time, the kings of Sky Tribute Square didn't realize that their guesses weren't too far off from the actual battle. However, they guessed wrong. The Fiend Battlefield. This time, the restrictions of the Celestial Tribute Realm were lifted. For the beings of the 3,000 realms, it was simply a hunting feast to earn battle merits. However, this was a life and death calamity for the beings of the Fiend Battlefield. Beside a lake, a gentle breeze blew past, causing ripples to appear on the surface of the water. The surface of the lake was like a mirror, reflecting a disheveled man sitting casually beside the gravel beside the lake. He wore coarse hemp clothes, and the corners of his clothes were soaked in the lake water, soaking a large portion. However, he was oblivious to it, and merely raised his head to drink the strong alcohol in his gourd. The man's hair was disheveled, and his beard was unshaven. His face was yellow and even somewhat ugly. Only his drunken eyes shone brightly like the stars in the deep night sky. A rusty sword was stabbed into the crevice of a stone not far away from the man. The man was a swordsman. At the very least, he was known as a plainclothes swordsman in the mouths of the 3,000 realms. One of the 10 great fiends. As though he sensed something, the man raised his head and narrowed his eyes, looking at the boundless firmament above his head. A faint light began to flicker there. Someone was coming. Many people. An incomprehensible sorrow flashed through the depths of the man's drunken eyes. Senior Brother Luo. Right then, more than 10 sword cultivators sped over from behind. The woman in the lead shouted before she even arrived. The man frowned slightly and looked sideways at the crowd with a hint of anger on his face. Didn't I tell you to hide and not show yourselves? Senior Brother Luo, we can't let you face the strong enemies outside alone. The woman in the lead gripped the sword in her hand and said in a deep voice. The man shook his head slightly and laughed self-deprecatingly. 1 person, 100 people, 1,000 people, what's the difference? All of you go back and hide. The man continued. If you can survive after this calamity is over, consider yourselves lucky. At this point, the man suddenly paused. In his heart, he did not know whether continuing to live in this world was considered lucky or unlucky. At the very least, he had lived long enough. Chapter 2854. Evil Demon Battlefield District 9. Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin descended from the sky. Lin Xuanjin's expression was solemn. She looked around and spread out her divine sense. The current evil demon battlefield was even more terrifying than it was 1,000 years ago. The number of evil demons and sinful spirits here had increased by many times. The 2 of them could be attacked by the evil demons and sinful spirits at any time. Su Zimo's spiritual perception warned him. He could sense the potential danger in the surroundings immediately, so he looked calm. District 9 was relatively close to District 7. Peak Master. Lin Xuanjin turned to Su Zimo and asked, Are we going to keep the appointment? Since 1,000 years ago, when Lin Xuanjin had expressed her feelings, Su Zimo did not respond. When she met Su Zimo again, she always addressed him as Peak Master. She thought that they should avoid a direct confrontation with Xia Yin and act according to the situation. After all, there would definitely be a bloody clash between the true spirits of the 3,000 worlds and the evil demons and sinful spirits. At that time, there might be a better opportunity. For example, if Xia Yin fought with one of the 10 great evil demons, he would be forced to use a supreme ability. In this way, Su Zimo would have a higher chance of winning against Xia Yin. Let's go. Su Zimo did not think so much. He just nodded casually and said, "We can't avoid this battle. It's better to end it early." At this moment, Lin Xuanjin's expression changed. Her gaze fell on a lake not far away. There were more than 10 sword cultivators standing there. They did not have the heaven bestowment token at their waists. Their clothes also revealed their identities as sinful spirits. At the same time, these sword cultivators also noticed the two of them. They all turned to look at them with intense killing intent and hostility in their eyes. Wang! 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 These sword cultivators immediately drew their swords. They turned into streaks of sword light and sped toward them with murderous intent. Lin Xuanjin's expression turned cold. The long sword on his back seemed to have sensed her intentions and unsheathed itself, landing in her palm. Evil demons and sinful spirits had once wreaked havoc in the 3,000 worlds. In her mind, killing evil demons and suppressing sinful spirits was enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. Su Zimo knew even more about the 10 great sin lands. The events of that year were shrouded in too much fog, making it difficult to distinguish the truth from the lies. Therefore, he had always been cautious when facing the evil spirits of the 10 great sinners. If it was not necessary, he did not want to fight them. Wait a moment. Su Zimo raised his hand slightly and stopped Lin Xuanjin. Lin Xuanjin frowned and was a little confused. Peak Master. The blood ape from last time was just an anomaly among the evil spirits. Lin Xuanjin said, "Look at how murderous these sword cultivators are. Even if you're soft-hearted, they won't show any mercy." Su Zimo did not answer. If these sword cultivators really attacked him, he naturally would not wait for death. He seemed to have sensed something. His gaze turned and landed on a lake not far away. There was a person sitting there. A drunkard with disheveled hair dressed in coarse hemp clothes. Not far away, there was a rusty long sword stuck in the ground. A plainclothes swordsman, one of the 10 great sinners. Lin Xuanjin also noticed this person, and his heart skipped a beat. But soon, her eyes released a strong fighting spirit. Sword chi enveloped her body, and she was eager to fight. If she had met this plainclothes swordsman 1,000 years ago, she would have taken a detour. But now, she had comprehended the immortal slaying sword and grown into a supreme true spirit. When she saw an evil spirit who was also a supreme true spirit, she only wanted to fight to her heart's content. Facing the supreme true spirits of other realms, she would more or less have some scruples. But facing evil spirits, she did not have any psychological burden. "Come back." Right then, the plainclothes swordsman suddenly spoke. His voice was neither loud nor soft, and it was a little hoarse. However, when the dozen or so sword cultivators heard it, they paused at the same time. "Senior brother, we're all sword cultivators. You don't want to fight, but they're sword cultivators from the outside. They're here to kill us." A woman looked at the plainclothes swordsman in confusion. Another person also said, "Senior brother, how many sword cultivators have you let go of over the years? But those sword cultivators have never been merciful to us." Hearing this, Lin Xuanjin's killing intent was reduced a little. She suddenly recalled that 1,000 years ago, when they were training in the evil demon battlefield, they had indeed seen this plainclothes swordsman from afar. However, this plainclothes swordsman ignored them. At that time, they thought that this swordsman of the 10 great sinners did not attack out of disdain or some other reason. But today, after hearing the words of the 2 sinners, this plainclothes swordsman deliberately let them go? Why was that? A trace of confusion flashed through the depths of Lin Xuanjin's eyes. "Come back." The plainclothes swordsman did not explain and merely sighed. The sinners looked at Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin with indignance and intense hostility. However, they did not go against the plainclothes swordsman's words and slowly retreated. Because of that, the conflict was resolved. Su Zimo looked at the lonely back view of the plainclothes swordsman. Suddenly, An indescribable emotion rose in his heart, and he wanted to go up and talk to him. Su Zimo moved and walked towards the plain-clothed swordsman. Lin Xuanjin did not know Su Zimo's intentions. Although he was puzzled, he still followed closely behind. When the sinners who had retreated saw Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin walk over, their expressions darkened. They drew their swords again and waited intently. "What are you doing? Senior brother has already let you go. How dare you come over? Are you courting death?" A few sinners berated loudly. Lin Xuanjin sneered slightly. His eyes fell on these sinful swordsmen and said, "It's hard to say who will live and who will die." With her current cultivation, she was confident in her ability to annihilate these 10-plus sword cultivators within 10 moves. "You're not her match. Move aside." The plain-clothed swordsman glanced sideways at Lin Xuanjin and said as though he had sensed something. Thereafter, his gaze landed on Su Zimo and paused for a long time before he frowned imperceptibly. He could tell that the foreign female sword cultivator had comprehended a supreme divine power. As for the black-haired man in green robes, strange. He was only at true self realm, Kongming realm. Normally speaking, at this realm, no matter how talented one was, the combat strength they could unleash would be limited. However, for some reason, the plain-clothed swordsman felt that he could not see through that person. More than a dozen swordsmen of sinful spirits made way for them, but they still stared at Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin to prevent them from suddenly hurting others. Su Zimo came to the side of the man and glanced at the rusty sword that was casually inserted into the crevice of a rock. He reached out and pulled it out. "This sword is a little old," Su Zimo said. The plain-clothed swordsman said, "It's good that it can kill." Chapter 2855. It was good that he could kill. That was right. Of course, through that rusty sword, Su Zimo was able to see a whole different world. In terms of sword Tao, the plain-clothed swordsman had already reached the realm of returning to simplicity. In his hands, that rusty sword was probably sharper than any divine weapon. Although Lin Xuanjin had also comprehended a supreme divine power, he was still likely to lose against that person. No matter what kind of strong enemies Lin Sun encountered outside, he always had all kinds of ways to retreat. However, if the plainclothes swordsman was defeated in the fiend battlefield, there was only a single path. A dead end. Deliberately mystifying things. Lin Xuanjin sneered and questioned, "How can an evil cultivator with sinner's blood be worthy of cultivating the sword Tao?" Since ancient times, good and evil had always been opposed. Lin Xuanjin was a righteous cultivator, and naturally did not have a good attitude towards evil and sinful spirits. Furthermore, his disgust towards evil and sinful spirits was deeply ingrained through countless years, and was difficult to change. An evil cultivator with sinner's blood. The plainclothes swordsman murmured softly, before chuckling in disdain. He raised his head, and glanced at Lin Xuanjin. His gaze was extremely complicated. It could be pity, envy, or sorrow. "What are you laughing at?" Lin Xuanjin had cultivated the sword Tao since he was young, and was righteous. His Tao heart was firm as he said sternly, "Even if an evil cultivator cultivates the sword Tao, they will not be able to reach the end, and see the true meaning of the great Tao due to their nature. That's the logic of evil never triumphing over good since ancient times." The plainclothes swordsman did not refute and merely nodded. It's naturally good that evil never triumphs over good. At that point, the plainclothes swordsman suddenly paused before continuing. If evil triumphs over good, it will no longer be evil. Lin Xuanjin was shocked when he heard that. Su Zimo frowned as well. Although that sentence seemed ordinary, it was filled with mystery. The plainclothes swordsman seemed to be lamenting and pitying himself. If evil triumphed over good, it would no longer be evil. When the righteous side was defeated, they would naturally be called evil. Therefore, since ancient times, evil had never triumphed over good. In Su Zimo's heart, of course, he knew that good was good and evil was evil. Even though there would be times when black and white were reversed and right and wrong were mixed up, there would come a day when the clouds would be dispelled, and the sun would be revealed. The world would be clear once again. However, when he thought of the information about the 10 great sin lands, and compared it with what the plain-clothed swordsman had said, he fell into deep thought. Evil fiend sinful spirit. Evil fiend sinful spirit. Lin Xuanjin, who was standing at the side, was stunned and speechless. The things that she had been steadfast in her heart were originally unshakable, but at this moment, they began to waver slightly. The plain-clothes swordsman looked at the two of them and shook his head slightly. His eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life, but he did not intend to explain anything. So what if the two of them had some feelings? It still couldn't change anything. At this moment, the black-haired man in green suddenly asked, "How should I address you, fellow Taoist?" The plain-clothes swordsman was slightly stunned. Before he could react, the man in green asked again, "Is your surname Luo?" The plain-clothes swordsman slowly turned his head and looked at Su Zimo in disbelief. The two of them looked at each other like this, and the surroundings were silent. In Su Zimo's eyes, the plain-clothes swordsman seemed to have seen something different. After a long while, the plain-clothes swordsman smiled desolately and said, "After so many years, you are the first person to ask for my name." He had been in the evil demon battlefield for more than 100,000 years. For more than 100,000 years, countless beings from the 3,000 worlds had entered the evil demon battlefield, but no one had ever asked for his name. After all, in the eyes of the beings from the 3,000 worlds, they were just evil fiends, sinful spirits, and battle achievements. They were just numbers. What surprised the plain-clothes swordsman even more was that this man in green actually guessed his surname. Through this person's eyes, the plain-clothes swordsman seemed to have seen something. This man in green was different from the other beings in the 3,000 worlds. The plain-clothes swordsman nodded and said, "Luo Jun then." Luo Jun looked at Su Zimo and asked, "Fellow Taoist, how should I address you?" "Su. Zhu." Su Zimo hesitated slightly and said, "I'm from the sword world. Fortunately, I obtained the inheritance of the great emperor of all heaven and comprehended the Tao of sword burial." Su Zimo did not say his real name, but he believed that with Luo Jun's experience, he should be able to guess his concerns. As expected, when Luo Jun heard Su Zimo's hesitation, he sensed something and only smiled slightly without saying anything. "Your surname is Luo?" Lin Xuanjin seemed to have thought of something and frowned. Rumble. The void trembled. Not far away, there was a group of black figures that were dashing over in a menacing manner, and they'd come with ill intent. The three people in the lead had terrifying auras. They were from the insect world, rat world, and ant world respectively. In addition to the 30 true spirits from these three worlds, there were also many true spirits from other worlds gathered around. In total, there were hundreds of them. From the looks of it, this group of beings from these worlds had already united to form an army of true spirits. Lin Xuanjin glanced at them and frowned slightly. Those three are the supreme true spirits on the battle merit jade tablet. Luo Jun stood up and waved his hand in a carefree manner. "You guys can leave." When Luo Jun stood up, Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin finally realized that Luo Jun's figure was unusually majestic. Standing by the lake, he gave off a feeling of being as tall as a mountain. His broad palms and slender fingers were most suitable for holding swords. This was a pair of hands that were born to hold swords. Facing people like Su Zimo and Lin Xuanjin, who cultivated the Tao of the sword, he would hold back. However, facing other beings from the 3,000 worlds, he was one of the 10 great demons. Luo Jun untied the gourd at his waist and raised his head to take a big gulp of strong liquor. The liquor splashed on his chest, but he did not notice it at all. "Does this liquor taste good?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. Luo Tian was stunned. He turned to look at him and asked, "Do you dare to drink it?" "Why not?" Su Zimo laughed loudly. Luo Jun also laughed. He threw the wine gourd to Su Zimo and said, "I didn't expect to meet such an interesting person like Brother Su before I die. My life was not in vain." Su Zimo raised his head to pour the liquor and took a big gulp. He praised, "Good liquor." Then, Su Zimo threw the wine gourd to Luo Jun and said, "Live well." Luo Jun looked at Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not say much. He only nodded at him. Su Zimo had long seen through Luo Jun's intention to die. Just now, His words had revealed his intentions without a doubt. That was why he said that. Luo Jun did not say much. He pulled out the rusted sword beside him and jumped up, rushing toward the hundreds of true spirits not far away. A dazzling sword light burst forth, stunning the world. Facing this sword, even Lin Xuanjin opened his mouth slightly, a trace of shock in his eyes. Even she might not be able to release such sword intent and Tao of the sword. Luo Jun was right. Although the sword was old, it was good that it could kill. Before the sword light faded, the bloody light in the air had already spread, accompanied by shrill screams. Hundreds of true spirits were torn apart by Luo Jun's sword, leaving behind a bloody wound. Chapter 2856. Although the Sword Realm did not have much of a relationship with the Rat Realm, Insect Realm, and Ant Realm, they were still living together. However, as living beings from the 3,000 realms, it was only right for them to join forces and deal with Luo Jun, one of the 10 great demons. Lin Xuanjin thought of what Luo Jun had said to him and his surname. He could not help but think of some other things, and could no longer attack him. Su Zimo naturally would not attack Luo Jun. However, they represented the Sword Realm after all. At this time, their every move in the demon battlefield was being watched by everyone outside. They could not openly join forces with Luo Jun to fight against the true spirit experts of the other realms. In this way, it would definitely cause gossip and bring endless trouble to the Sword Realm. Against 3 supreme true spirits, can he win? Lin Xuanjin looked at the battle and asked softly. Su Zimo frowned and did not say anything. He believed that with Luo Jun's battle strength, if he faced a true spirit, he should have an 80% chance of winning. But now, with 3 true spirits joining forces, Luo Jun was in a difficult situation. Luo Jun's only chance was that the true spirits of the 3 realms would not immediately release their supreme divine abilities. A supreme divine ability was the greatest trump card of a true spirit expert. In a dangerous place like the demon battlefield, one would be extremely cautious when releasing a supreme divine ability. Moreover, with 3 true spirits joining forces, the 3 of them believed that they had the absolute upper hand, so there was no need to use their supreme divine abilities. The dozen or so sinful spirit sword cultivators who were originally beside Luo Jun also stepped forward and fought side by side with Luo Jun. Luo Jun's sword Tao was abnormally sharp. It was different from any of the 9 great sword Taos of the Sword Realm. Instead, he had comprehended his own unique sword Tao. Lin Xuanjin might not be able to see it, but Su Zimo had been taught by the great emperor of the All-Heaven. He could see the shadow of the great Luo sword manual from Luo Jun's sword Tao. In just a few breaths, the battlefield was abnormally tragic. Corpses were everywhere. On Luo Jun's side, he blocked the attack of hundreds of true spirits led by the Insect Realm, Rat Realm, and Ant Realm. The Insect, Rat, and Ant Realm's supreme true spirits saw that their clansmen had suffered heavy casualties, and the pressure on them increased greatly. They all transformed into their true forms and attacked Luo Jun crazily. Luo Jun's sword Tao was simple and crude. It did not have any fancy moves. Often when the sword stabbed out, it would be aimed at the vital points, forcing the opponent to defend and save. Even when facing the besieging of 3 great supreme true spirits, Luo Jun could still occupy the absolute upper hand. However, the 10+ sword cultivators of the sinful spirits were unable to resist the attacks of a few hundred true spirits. They were unable to hold on, and were forced to retreat. If Luo Jun wanted to protect these sinful spirit sword cultivators as much as possible, he would have to bear the brunt of the attacks from the true spirits. As time passed, the supreme true spirits of the Insect, Rat, and Ant realms gradually turned the situation around and took the initiative. Wounds began to appear on Luo Jun's body. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He naturally didn't want to see Luo Jun die here, but he didn't have a suitable opportunity to act. At this time, a violent energy fluctuation came from not far away. It was not inferior to the battle here. The sky over there was burning with raging flames, turning it completely red. Roar! Immediately after, a dragon roar that reverberated through the world sounded. Although it was slightly immature, it was still incomparably dignified. Dragons. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. In the dragon world, Long Li led 10 true dragons into the fiend battlefield. If he was not wrong, the dragon roar earlier on should have been released by Long Li. Furthermore, judging from the emotions transmitted by the dragon roar, Long Li seemed to have encountered an extremely strong opponent. Su Zimo's gaze flickered, and a plan popped up in his mind. He pondered for a moment and said, "Let's go over there and take a look." Before he finished his sentence, Su Zimo had already moved and sped towards the direction of the dragon roar. Lin Xuanjin glanced at the battlefield on Luo Jun's side and grit his teeth as well, following behind Su Zimo. Even without the matter on Luo Jun's side, Su Zimo would not sit idly by if he knew that Long Li was in danger in the fiend battlefield. Before long, Su Zimo arrived at another battlefield. The battle on this side was a head-on collision between two super great worlds. One of them was naturally the dragon world led by Long Li. The other side was from the Wutong world. More than 10 true dragons, true phoenixes from both sides were fighting. The most eye-catching thing was the battle between Long Li and the two figures from the Wutong world. Long Li had already revealed his true form. He was a silver-blue divine dragon, and he constantly let out dragon roars. He was entangled with a divine phoenix and a divine phoenix. Long Li's body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of frost. As his dragon breath spewed out, a cold air spread and could freeze thousands of miles. On the other hand, the divine phoenix and divine phoenix burned with raging flames, blocking Long Li's breath. One ice and one fire, one cold and one hot. Two extreme powers collided on the battlefield, causing the ground to quake and rocks to fly everywhere. Long Li was clearly at a disadvantage. Furthermore, from the looks of it, both sides seemed to have released supreme divine powers in the surrounding battlefield. Otherwise, there would not have been such large-scale destruction. Beneath the 3 top-tier living beings, everything was reduced to ruins. In the battle, Long Li transformed back into his human form and panted heavily. Gripping the heavenly token, he was prepared to leave the fiend battlefield. The divine phoenix and divine phoenix opposite him transformed back into their human forms at the same time. A man and a woman stood side by side. Among them, the man had short fiery red hair that soared into the skies as though there was a ball of flames above his head. He had long, narrow phoenix eyes and held a scarlet spear that burned with flames in his hands. As for the woman beside him, she also had wavy, scarlet hair that draped casually over her shoulders. She had a peerless appearance and held a fiery red bow in one hand and a fiery red arrow in the other. The two supreme true spirits of the Wutong world in this generation, Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden. Fufu. Fengzi chuckled and waved the phoenix feather spear in his hands gently. Long Li, I've said long ago that you're still too young and not suitable to come to the fiend battlefield. That's right. Phoenix Maiden smiled as well. Little girl, hurry and go home. It's too dangerous here. Long Li's petite face was filled with indignation. However, she knew that she only had a single path of retreat now that she was targeted by the two of them. Leave the fiend battlefield. Right then, a voice sounded from not far away. The two of you can still be so righteous when you're ganging up on one person? Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden frowned at the same time and turned to look. Not far away, a man and a woman were speeding over. The man had black hair and was dressed in a green robe. He had delicate features and was the one who had just spoken. When Long Li saw this person, she was overjoyed and could not help but smile. She waved over and said, "Brother Mo. Su Zhu." Fengzi frowned slightly. He had obviously heard of Su Zimo's name, but there was no fear on his face. Chapter 2857. Su Zhu. Fengzi spoke. The two of us have always worked together against enemies. Whether you're alone, 2 or 10, the two of us will deal with you. That's right. Phoenix Maiden added. If you want to interfere, you can join forces with Long Li. The two of us will still deal with you. Indeed, the two of them were not lying about that. The two of them had cultivated together since they were young, and were telepathic. Their teamwork and tacit understanding allowed them to unleash combat strength that far exceeded their own. Even if two true spirits joined forces, it would be difficult for them to gain the upper hand against the two of them. Oh, Su Zimo chuckled and said, I have some ties with this fellow Taoist Longli. Since we've met today, I'd like to see what the two of you are capable of. Lin Xuanjin had originally intended to join forces with Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo glanced sideways and whispered, Go and take care of Longli later. There are many evil fiends and sinful spirits nearby, and they might take advantage of the situation to attack. Lin Xuanjin's spirit consciousness moved, and he could not help but frown. True enough, the commotion here attracted the two of them over. Many evil fiends and sinful spirits were also gathering over, hiding nearby and eyeing covetously. The number of evil fiends and sinful spirits nearby increased. However, there were only 10 people on Long Li's side, and all of them were covered in injuries. Long Li had just released a supreme mystic ability, and it was equivalent to him losing his greatest reliance. He might truly be in danger against the attacks of so many evil fiends and sinful spirits. You're alone. However, Lin Xuanjin was still worried about Su Zimo. If she went to protect Long Li's group, it would mean that Su Zimo would have to face the combined attacks of Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden alone. Furthermore, the combined attacks of the two of them were the most difficult to defend against among the true spirits. Don't worry, Su Zimo replied with a firm tone. These two can't hurt me. Hearing Su Zimo's relaxed tone, Lin Xuanjin felt slightly relieved. He nodded and sped towards Long Li. Brother Su Zhu, be careful of their weapons. At this moment, Long Li's voice rang out in Su Zimo's mind. Fengzi has a powerful body and uses the Phoenix Feather Spear. He specializes in close combat. Phoenix Maiden wields the Phoenix Bone Bow. Huang Yujian, search for openings in the distance and wait for an opportunity to strike. Su Zimo nodded slightly. Swoosh. Su Zimo did not exchange pleasantries with Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden. Raising his hand and closing his sword fingers, he slashed out 2 streams of heaven-slaying sword chi in the direction of the two of them. As a supreme true spirit, Fengzi no longer had any qualms when he saw Su Zimo strike first. He transformed into a streak of flames and charged towards Su Zimo. Swoosh! The Phoenix Feather Spear burned with raging flames as it tore through the air. Accompanied by a series of phoenix cries, it pierced towards Su Zimo's head. Su Zimo had a calm expression and was about to retreat when his spirit perception alerted him. Su Zimo caught a glimpse from the corner of his eye. Far away, Phoenix Maiden stood in the air with the Phoenix Bone Bow in her hands fully drawn. Huang Yujian was already knocked and aimed at Su Zimo's location. To be precise, Phoenix Maiden had already determined Su Zimo's escape route. If she shot that arrow, she would seal off his escape route. The two of them are truly telepathic. It's rare for them to be able to cooperate to this extent. A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. However, his movements did not change as he continued retreating to avoid the sharpest edge of the Phoenix Feather Spear. Swash! A scarlet streak of flames tore through the void, leaving a burn mark in midair. There was no way Phoenix Maiden would miss out on this opportunity. Huang Yujian had already locked onto Su Zimo's escape route. As long as Su Zimo retreated, he would definitely collide into her Huang Yujian. The cooperation between the two of them had long been ingrained into their bones, and there was no need for any communication. It was as though they were born together, as though they were conjoined. Su Zimo continued retreating. However, after dodging the sharpest edge of the Phoenix Feather Spear, he extended his palm and sliced gently at the side of the Phoenix Feather Spear. Su Zimo did not use his blood chi for that palm strike, and only used 50% of his strength. However, it was enough to change the original trajectory of the Phoenix Feather Spear. The body of the Phoenix Feather Spear trembled and deviated slightly, streaking past Su Zimo's side. At the same time, Huang Yujian's flames arrived and struck the tip of the Phoenix Feather Spear, without missing a single bit. Clang! The Phoenix Feather Spear and Huang Yujian's 2 pure young spirit treasures collided beside Su Zimo's body. With a loud explosion, flames soared to the heavens. The 2 pure young spirit treasures had both erupted with their strongest strength, but they were unable to harm Su Zimo in the slightest. Instead, Su Zimo had borrowed the force of the attack and cleverly resolved it. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye. Although it seemed simple, it showed Su Zimo's precise control of the situation and timing. Only when one's strength was absolutely overwhelming would one be so confident. Haha! Su Zimo laughed loudly and continued retreating in the direction he came from. He shook his head and said, "Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden, so this is all there is to it." Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden had never been provoked like this before, and they were both enraged. Fengzi's blood qi surged. Holding the phoenix feather spear, he charged towards Su Zimo once more. Phoenix Maiden also drew her phoenix bone bow and followed closely behind. Far away from Su Zimo, she stared fixedly at him, ready to shoot a fatal arrow at any moment. However, Su Zimo's movement technique was extremely fast, and he was also graceful and agile. A pair of ethereal wings grew from his back, and his position was unpredictable, causing Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden to be unable to lock onto him for a moment. Fengzi could not help but feel annoyed when he saw that Su Zimo was not fighting with them. He could not help but mock. "I've long heard that the peak master of Sword World's 9th Sword Peak had once killed 10 true spirit realm experts of the Heavenly Eye race single-handedly. I thought that he was invincible. To think that I would be so disappointed today. So, he's just a cowardly rat who only knows how to scurry away. Su Zhu, you cultivate the sword Dao and should be advancing courageously. Why are you retreating again and again?" Phoenix Maiden berated as well. Su Zimo did not reply, and merely smiled faintly. In that short period of time, the three of them were rapidly approaching another battlefield. Over here, the true spirit experts of the worm, rat, and ant realms were still fighting against Luo Jun and the other sinful spirits. Seeing that they could not take down the enemy after a long time and suffered heavy casualties, the supreme true spirits of the worm, rat, and ant realms were prepared to use their supreme mystiques. The three of them did not believe that they could not kill this plainclothes swordsman with their 3 supreme mystiques. Right then, Su Zimo suddenly paused and burst forth with heaven's feet, earth traversing golden light, and other movement techniques. He sped up once more and charged towards Phoenix Maiden's position. Fengzi's expression changed starkly. Compared to him, Phoenix Maiden was not adept at melee combat. As for Phoenix Maiden's Phoenix Bone Bow, Huang Yujian would not be able to unleash its original power if she were to engage in melee combat. Swoosh! When Phoenix Maiden saw Su Zimo charging over, she panicked and shot another arrow. However, Su Zimo dodged it easily. She only had a single shot. Before she could knock the second Huang Yujian, Su Zimo had already arrived before her. His black hair fluttered and his gaze was like a torch. He was like an unsheathed sword that was about to slice her into two. Chapter 2858. Before Su Zimo truly attacked, the sharpness emanating from his body was already enough to cause the Phoenix Maiden immense pain and a tearing sensation. There was no hint of panic in the Phoenix Maiden's eyes. Her blood qi was already channeled to its limits and ignited. As though she was bathed in blazing flames, she conjured hand seals repeatedly with both hands. Swoosh! Behind her, the bloodline phenomenon of a divine phoenix rose as though it was corporeal. Scorching lava spilled from its body as it reared its head and roared into the skies, glaring at Su Zimo with a death glare. At the same time, Fengzi's figure suddenly appeared beside the Phoenix Maiden. This was not a teleportation technique. It was difficult to release teleportation divine powers in such a chaotic battlefield. This secret skill was more like a unique connection method between Fengzi and the Phoenix Maiden. When one party was in danger, the other party could appear out of thin air and join forces to fight against the enemy. Fengzi arrived beside the Phoenix Maiden. His bloodline was already channeled to its limits, and the bloodline phenomenon of a divine phoenix was conjured. The two bloodline phenomenons of the divine phoenix and divine phoenix intertwined and spiraled in midair, emitting an incomparably scorching heat. In fact, the sharp sword qi released by Su Zimo was melted and turned into nothingness. Fengzi and the Phoenix Maiden had already vanished. Opposite Su Zimo, there were only 2 gigantic fireballs left, resembling a pair of blazing suns that were inches away. However, The pair of blazing suns were still converging and fusing rapidly. You're still far from being able to challenge us single-handedly. Fengzi and the Phoenix Maiden's voices sounded at the same time. As the two fireballs fused rapidly, the bloodline phenomenons of the Divine Phoenix and Divine Phoenix behind them fused and collided, as though they were about to fuse together. Phoenix. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged, and he merely narrowed his eyes as that thought flashed through his mind. Both phoenixes and dragon phoenixes were taboo existences. However, Su Zimo dismissed that thought before long. This aura was even stronger than the forbidden phoenix. Moreover, this aura gave him a trace of familiarity. This was the holy beast vermilion bird. The fusion of their bloodline phenomena had actually transformed into the image of the holy beast vermilion bird. This was their true killing move. With this technique, the two of them could once again summon the vermilion bird's heavenly fire and fight against any true spirit. This was equivalent to the two of them controlling three supreme divine powers. Hence, the two of them were so confident. Among the supreme true spirits, not many could gain any advantage in the hands of these two. Su Zimo sensed the terrifying aura coming from the other side, but he didn't dodge. Instead, he recalled the secret art the vermilion bird Holy Soul had imparted to him on the hell-suppressing cauldron. He had already comprehended this secret art back when he was in the mystic origin realm. He had comprehended the milky white Nanmingli fire. However, in reality, Su Zimo knew very well that the Nanming primordial fire was not the end of the inheritance of this secret technique. If the Nanmingli fire could improve further, it would become the vermilion bird heavenly fire. However, he hadn't had the opportunity to come into contact with the godly phoenix and the godly phoenix clan. Now, as he sensed the vermilion bird avatar that was about to transform, Su Zimo compared it to the secret art the vermilion bird Holy Soul had imparted to him. The parts that were originally difficult to understand suddenly became clear. "Don't blame us if you don't leave now," Fengzi and the Phoenix Maiden scolded. The two bloodline phenomena merged completely and transformed into a crimson bird. Its eyes were extremely sharp and cold as it stared at Su Zimo, who was not far away. The vermilion bird suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a stream of crimson flames that instantly engulfed Su Zimo's figure. In the void, the terrifying power of the supreme divine powers filled the air. This was the heavenly fire of the vermilion bird. At the same time, on the battlefield not far away, the battle between the supreme true spirits of the three realms and Luo Jun had also reached its climax. As if attracted by the supreme divine powers beside them, the supreme true spirits of the three realms on the battlefield also unleashed their supreme divine powers at the same time. Space-time imprisonment, eternal damnation, eternal darkness. This was the 3,000 worlds. In the heaven realm, only Wu Dao's original body had comprehended the supreme divine powers of eternal damnation. However, there were countless living beings in the 3,000 worlds. The supreme divine powers of eternal damnation had been passed down for many years. There would always be living beings of other races who would comprehend it by chance. Which one of those who could grow into a supreme true spirit wasn't gifted and had endless opportunities? Which one of them wasn't the darling of heaven and earth and was envied by the heavens? Now, this group of darlings of heaven and earth had gathered in the evil demon battlefield. One could imagine how intense the battle would be. Space-time imprisonment, eternal darkness, eternal damnation. Each of the three supreme divine powers was not to be underestimated. Among them, space-time imprisonment could completely lock a cultivator. As for the eternal darkness, if one couldn't tear the darkness apart, they would be completely engulfed by the darkness and become a part of it. The damage of eternal damnation was even more unparalleled. Luo Jun's expression was grim. He only had a single supreme divine power, the immortal slaying sword. With the immortal slaying sword, he could only neutralize a single supreme divine power. The battle was ever-changing and wouldn't give him any time to think. In a flash, Luo Jun channeled his essence spirit and condensed a blood-red sword with a murderous aura between his palms, breaking through the descending space-time shackles. That was his choice. Among the three supreme divine powers, the space-time imprisonment seemed to cause the least damage. However, if he allowed the space-time shackles to restrain him, he would be at the mercy of the other party and die without a doubt. If he severed the space-time shackles and regained his freedom, he might have a chance to escape. Of course, it was extremely difficult to escape from the shroud of the two supreme divine powers. On one side, darkness attacked. On the other, eternal calamity enveloped. In the blink of an eye, Luo Jun was in danger. At the same time, on the battlefield not far away, the vermilion bird heavenly fire burned Su Zimo continuously and had already drowned his figure. However, to the surprise of Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden, Su Zimo did not resist or release any supreme divine powers throughout the entire process. He allowed the vermilion bird heavenly fire to envelop his body. What shocked the two of them even more was that the vermilion bird heavenly fire did not burn Su Zimo to death immediately. Within the vermilion bird heavenly fire, Su Zimo's vitality was still exuberant. Moreover, his body seemed to be undergoing some kind of shocking transformation. The vermilion bird heavenly fire contained countless runic Dao techniques. For ordinary living beings, such runic Dao techniques were fatal. However, for Su Zimo, who had obtained the inheritance of the vermilion bird, this was an opportunity that could allow the Nanmingli fire to transform into the vermilion bird heavenly fire. Of course, in the eyes of others, this process was incomprehensible. This was simply playing with fire. However, one of the Dao techniques Su Zimo was most proficient in was the Dao of fire. Chapter 2859. Prior to this, Su Zimo controlled the immortal Buddhist and fiend Dao fires, and the Nanmingli fire that represented the demonic Dao. Coupled with his essence spirit fire, he could conjure the killing move of the Pentati Dao fire. Therefore, when the vermilion bird heavenly fire descended, Su Zimo secretly conjured the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Dao fires to defend against it. At the same time, he used the Nanmingli fire to slowly come into contact with the vermilion bird heavenly fire to sense the differences within. The reason why Su Zimo dared to be so careless was naturally because the three Dao fires were only the first layer of protection. His second layer of protection came from the grade 12 creation Qinglian's body. Even if the vermilion bird heavenly fire seeped into his bloodline, it would be extinguished by the grade 12 Qinglian's bloodline. Su Zimo wanted to hide the secret of Qinglian's true body for the time being, and naturally did not want to use her bloodline. However, if any power seeped into Qinglian's body, he did not have to care. Qinglian's bloodline would naturally purify and cleanse the power silently. Therefore, under the gaze of Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden, Su Zimo, who was enveloped by the vermilion bird heavenly fire, was not injured at all. Instead, his aura grew stronger. He seemed to be absorbing the power of the vermilion bird heavenly fire and growing rapidly. How was that possible? Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden widened their eyes in disbelief. The two of them were telepathic, and with a single thought, they channeled the vermilion bird conjured by their bloodline phenomenons and charged towards Su Zimo. Swoosh! The vermilion bird charged into the flames around Su Zimo, but did not cause much of a blaze. After a momentary pause, the flames around Su Zimo intensified, and the color of the flames changed continuously, eventually turning scarlet. That aura was no different from the vermilion bird heavenly fire. Pust! Fengzi and Huang Nu sucked in a breath of cold air. He had comprehended the vermilion bird heavenly fire? Not only that, but the vermilion bird heavenly fire on the other side seemed to be a little different from what they controlled. It was mixed with some other kind of power. This change caused the vermilion bird skyfire to become even more terrifying, violent, and unstable. Boom! This ball of vermilion bird heavenly fire suddenly exploded in front of Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden. Countless sparks flew in all directions. Fengzi and Phoenix Maiden were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. They were hit by the flames and were instantly sent flying. They fell heavily to the ground from midair and vomited blood. Of course, the two of them did not suffer the greatest damage. More flames, intentionally or unintentionally, rushed to the battlefield at the side, directly turning another battlefield upside down. Under the pincer attack of eternal night and eternal damnation, Luo Jun had nowhere to run. But at this moment, an earth-shattering sound came from not far away. The next moment, flames soared into the sky. A large expanse of scarlet flames, like a tsunami of magma, surged and rushed into the darkness of the eternal night. These lava flames contained the supreme divine ability of the vermilion bird heavenly fire. They emitted blazing red flames and tore apart the darkness. There was also a portion of the lava flames that rushed to eternal damnation on the other side, resisting the 10,000 heavenly tribulations and letting out sizzling sounds. The supreme true spirits of the insect, rat, and ant realms were not prepared and were burned by this ball of heavenly fire. The army of several hundred true spirits was shattered into pieces by the impact, and they were utterly defeated. Of course, Luo Jun was also attacked by some of the heavenly fire. However, compared to eternal night and eternal damnation, the damage these heavenly fire did to him was negligible. He blocked it easily with his Sword Dao divine abilities and bloodline secret techniques. In the chaos, Luo Jun's gaze shifted and locked onto the three supreme true spirits. He charged over with his sword again. Without their supreme divine abilities, their greatest reliance, even if the three supreme true spirits joined forces, they could not block Luo Jun's sword. The beings of the insect, rat, and ant realms were best at gathering their clansmen and bullying others with numbers. In terms of combat strength, the supreme true spirits of the three realms were ranked last on the war merit Jade Steel. The three of them had already suffered quite a bit of damage, and now that they came into contact with Luo Jun, they showed signs of defeat. Unable to resist, they took out their tokens and turned into streaks of light that fled the fiendish battlefield. The remaining true spirits did not dare to stay after seeing the three supreme true spirits leave the battlefield. They all left. The battle between the supreme true spirits of the 3,000 worlds and the fiendish battlefield ended in chaos. On the Sky Tribute Plaza, the kings of the 3,000 worlds had gathered here to watch the battle. They were all dumbfounded by this scene and could not recover for a while. It was not until the supreme true spirits of the insect, rat, and ant realms, and the other true spirits retreated from the fiendish battlefield that the Sky Tribute Plaza became noisy. What's going on? Su Zhu of the Sword World is not dead and has comprehended something in the vermilion bird heavenly fire? From the looks of it, he must have comprehended the second combat art, vermilion bird heavenly fire. He's so young, but he's so bold. He dares risk being burned to ashes by the vermilion bird heavenly fire to comprehend this combat art. Under everyone's gazes, Su Zimo stood in the air in the fiend battlefield. His entire body was bathed in the scarlet vermilion bird heavenly fire, and he was undergoing the baptism of a supreme divine power. This baptism was immensely beneficial to one's bloodline, body, and nascent spirit. Even one's cultivation realm would improve noticeably. To comprehend two combat arts in the Kongming realm of the true first realm, this kid's future is truly limitless. The Sword World has given birth to a genius who can rival Great Emperor Immortal. If he grows up smoothly and doesn't die prematurely, he'll definitely become an emperor in the future. Haha, that's hard to say. Let's see if Su Zhu can survive this. Don't forget, Xia Yin is still waiting for him in District 7. Lu Yin and the others were overjoyed to see Su Zimo receive such an opportunity. At the same time, however, they also felt a pang of regret. Who would have thought that the vermilion bird heavenly fire would have been released so early? If they could suppress it, Su Zimo would have had a better chance of survival when he faced Xia Yin. But now, The king of the rat world had an ugly look on his face as he looked at Lu Yin and the others from Sword World. This Su Zhu of yours is quite something. She didn't kill the evil demons in the fiend battlefield, but instead injured the true spirits of our worlds. That's right. The king of the insect world agreed. If it weren't for Su Zhu, our sacred spirits would have been enough to kill the plain-clothed swordsmen of the 10 great fiends. Fellow Taoists, please be careful with your words. What happened just now was obviously a sudden turn of events. Su Zhu didn't intentionally injure your sacred spirits. Su Zhu didn't know that he could comprehend the vermilion bird heavenly fire. How could he have controlled the situation amidst the chaos? The king of Wudong realm also stepped forward. He stared coldly at the people of Sword World and said, "Forget about what happened just now. Why did Su Zhu meddle in other people's business and injure the Phoenix sons and Phoenix daughters of my realm?" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.